Farmer evicts mother and daughter from home. 3 years later, they buy all his land. Emily Cooper held her daughter Olivia tightly as tears streamed down her face. Colonel Richard Thornton stood on the porch of his house clutching a stack of dirt-stained papers in one hand and an old rag in the other. "You have until the end of the day to get off my property," shouted the farmer, throwing their belongings onto the dusty ground. "I don't want to see a trace of you here after sunset." Olivia, just 9 years old, clung to her mother's worn-out skirt, not fully understanding what was happening. Emily's heart broke at the fear in her daughter's eyes, but she knew she had to stay strong. "Please, Colonel Richard, give us a few more days," Emily begged, her voice trembling. "My husband worked this land for 15 years. We have a right to—" "A right?" The hat-wearing man stomped down the porch steps. "The only right you have is to leave immediately. Your husband is gone, and I owe nothing to widows and orphans." Emily swallowed her tears and slowly stood, helping Olivia up. The girl's eyes were red, and her wrinkled dress was covered in road dust. "Where will we sleep tonight, Mama?" Olivia whispered, tugging at her mother's sleeve. "We'll figure it out, my dear," Emily replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Colonel Richard watched with crossed arms, showing no sign of pity. His farm stretched for miles with lush pastures and a grand house that starkly contrasted the small wooden shack where Emily and Olivia had lived for years. "And take all this with you," he said, kicking a rag doll that had fallen to the ground. "I won't have trash littering my property." Emily bent down to pick up the doll, her daughter's favorite toy. Her hands shook with anger and humiliation, but she held back. Any reaction might make things worse. "Come on, Olivia," Emily said, taking her daughter's small hand. "Let's gather our things." The two moved toward their scattered belongings, clothes, a few broken dishes, crumpled photographs, and the handful of books Emily had managed to save over the years. All that remained of the life she had lovingly built with her husband. Olivia knelt and carefully folded her little clothes, just as her mother had taught her. Emily watched with a mix of pride and sorrow. The girl was strong, too strong for her age. "Mama, what about the garden?" Olivia asked, looking at the small patch where they grew vegetables. "Who will take care of the tomatoes we planted?" Emily's throat tightened. The garden was the result of months of hard work, and now it would be left behind. The plants they had nurtured would wither or be destroyed. "Someone else will tend to it now," Emily answered, forcing her voice steady. "And we'll plant a new garden somewhere else." Colonel Richard tapped his foot impatiently. He was a burly man in his mid-50s, always wearing the same leather hat passed down from his father. His clothes were simple, but he carried the authority of generations of landowners. "You're taking too long," he grumbled. "I've got work to do." Emily ignored him and kept helping Olivia gather their things. She knew the farmer enjoyed their suffering, and that only made her more determined not to show weakness. As they packed, Emily replayed the last few months in her mind. After her husband fell ill and could no longer work on the farm, the family's financial situation had become complicated. Colonel Richard Thornton had grown increasingly impatient with the delays in paying the rent for the small house, and in recent weeks he had begun making threats. "Ready, Mum," said Olivia, carrying a cardboard box with her toys. "I got everything." Emily looked around one last time. The small wooden house where they had been happy now seemed so tiny and fragile. The windows were open, and she could see the empty interior with lighter marks on the walls where the furniture had once stood. "Are you planning to walk?" asked Colonel Richard Thornton, a mocking tone in his voice. "The town is 15 miles. From here." Emily felt her blood boil. The man knew perfectly well they had no money for transportation, yet he was kicking them out in the middle of the afternoon without any consideration. "We'll manage," she replied, lifting a bundle of clothes. Olivia looked at the dirt road stretching toward the horizon. The sun was strong, and she knew it would be a long, difficult walk, especially carrying the family's belongings. "Can I hold my doll in my arms?" the girl asked, hugging the toy to her chest. "Of course, my dear," Emily answered, stroking the girl's blonde hair. "And if you get tired, Mommy will carry it for you." Colonel Richard Thornton watched the two prepare to leave and felt a pang of something he couldn't identify. For a moment his expression softened, but then he hardened his face again. "Wait," he said, making Emily and Olivia turn around. "Take this too." He threw a water bottle on the ground near Emily's feet. The bottle was old and had a few cracks, but it could still be used. "Thank you," Emily murmured, picking up the bottle and placing it in her bag. It was a small gesture, almost insignificant, but at that moment it meant the difference between having water or not during the long walk to town. Emily wondered if there was any trace of humanity left in that man's heart. Olivia, silently, said goodbye to the vegetable garden, the chickens running around the yard, and the mango tree where she used to play on hot afternoons. Every corner of that place held a special memory, and leaving it all behind felt like tearing a piece of her heart away. "Come on, my dear," Emily said, taking Olivia's hand. "Our new life starts now." The two walked down the dirt road, carrying their belongings and leaving behind the only home Olivia could remember having. Colonel Richard Thornton stood on the porch, watching their silhouettes fade into the distance until they disappeared, around the bend in the road. Emily felt every step like a heavy burden. It wasn't just the physical weight of the belongings she carried, but also the weight of responsibility, caring for her daughter with nowhere to go. She had grown up in that area, knew almost everyone, but had no close relatives or friends who could help them now. "Mum, my feet hurt," Olivia complained after an hour of walking. Emily stopped and knelt to examine her daughter's feet. The girl's shoes were old and tight, and blisters were already forming. "Let's rest for a while," Emily said, looking for shade by the roadside. They sat under a tree, and Emily offered Olivia some water. As the girl drank, Emily looked at the landscape around them. Green fields stretched as far as the eye could see, all belonging to Colonel Richard Thornton or other farmers in the area. "Mum, why was the man with the hat mad at us?" Olivia asked, handing the bottle back to her mother. Emily thought carefully before answering. "I didn't want to scare my daughter more than she already was, but I also couldn't lie about the situation we were in. He wanted us to pay money to stay in the little house, and we didn't have any," explained Emily. "So he said we couldn't stay there anymore. But Daddy always paid the money," said Olivia with the innocence of a child. "That's true, sweetheart. But when Daddy got sick, it became hard for us to get the money." Olivia nodded, as if she understood. But Emily knew the girl was still too young to fully grasp the complexity of their family's financial struggles. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. After half an hour of rest, they resumed their walk. The sun grew, stronger, and Emily felt sweat trickling down her back. Olivia walked bravely beside her, but it was clear the girl was exhausted. "Look, Mom," said Olivia, pointing to a house in the distance. "There's a house over there. Do you think they can help us?" Emily looked where her daughter was pointing and saw a modest property with a simple house and a well-kept yard. She hesitated for a moment, torn between pride and the need to find shelter for her child. "Let's see if they can give us some water," Emily decided. The two approached the house and Emily knocked gently on the door. After a few minutes, an elderly woman appeared, wearing a flowered apron with her grey hair tied in a bun. "Good afternoon," Emily greeted. "Sorry to bother you, but we're on our way to town, and my daughter is very tired. Would you have some water to spare?" The woman looked at Emily and Olivia, immediately noticing their exhaustion and desperation. Her eyes filled with compassion. "Of course, dear," she replied. "Come in, please. You look like you need more than just water." Emily felt immense relief. It was the first kindness they'd received since leaving Colonel Richard Thornton's farm. "My name is Mrs. Abigail," the woman said, guiding them inside. "And you are?" "I'm Emily, and this is my daughter Olivia," Emily answered. "Thank you so much for your kindness." Mrs. Abigail's house was simple but cozy. The walls were painted light blue and small vases of flowers were scattered around the room. Olivia looked around curiously, admiring the details that made the house feel like a real home. "Sit here," said Mrs. Abigail, pointing to a sofa covered with a colorful blanket. "I'll get some fresh water and maybe something for you to eat." While Mrs. Abigail went to the kitchen, Emily sat on the sofa and pulled Olivia close. The girl rested her head on her mother's shoulder and closed her eyes, finally allowing herself to relax a little. "Are you running from something?" Mrs. Abigail asked when she returned from the kitchen, carrying a tray with water, bread, and cheese. Emily hesitated before answering. She didn't know if she could trust this woman's kindness or if she too had some connection to Colonel Richard Thornton. "Not exactly running," Emily replied carefully. "We were evicted from the farm where we lived." Mrs. Abigail nodded in understanding. She had seen similar situations happen to other families in the area. "Colonel Richard Thornton?" she asked, lowering her voice. Emily confirmed with a nod. Mrs. Abigail sighed deeply, as if she had expected that answer. "That man has no heart," Mrs. Abigail murmured. "He's evicted at least 5 families just this year." Olivia lifted her head and looked at Mrs. Abigail with interest. It was the first time she'd heard anyone criticize Colonel Richard, and it made her feel less alone in her outrage. "He really is awful," said Olivia, with the typical honesty of children. Mrs. Abigail smiled sadly at the girl and offered a piece of bread with cheese. "Eat something," she said. "You need to regain your strength." Emily accepted the food gratefully. The bread was fresh, and the cheese had a homemade flavor that reminded her of better times. Olivia ate hungrily, and Emily realized her daughter hadn't had a proper meal in days. "Where are you headed?" asked Mrs. Abigail, sitting in a chair across from the sofa. "To the city," replied Emily. "I'll look for work and a place for us to live." "Do you have family there?" Emily shook her head. The truth was she didn't have a concrete plan. She only knew she had to find a way to support her daughter and start over, far from Colonel Richard's farm. "Listen," said Mrs. Abigail, leaning forward. "I know a woman in the city who rents rooms at a fair price. Her name is Mrs. Florence. I'll write down the address for you." She stood and went to fetch paper and pen. Meanwhile, Emily took in the details of the room. Old photographs hung on the walls, showing a younger Mrs. Abigail beside a man who must have been her husband. On the coffee table, a vase of wildflowers added color to the space. "Here you go," said Mrs. Abigail, handing over a neatly written address. "Tell her I sent you. She's a good person. She'll help you." Emily carefully tucked the paper into her bag. It was the first real lead she had on how to rebuild their lives in the city. "How can we thank you?" Emily asked, moved. "No need for thanks," replied Mrs. Abigail. "Just help others when you get the chance. That's how the world becomes a better place." Olivia finished eating and got up to explore the room. She stopped in front of a bookshelf full of books, running her finger along the colorful spines. "Do you like to read, dear?" asked Mrs. Abigail. "My mommy taught me," Olivia replied. "But we don't have many books." Mrs. Abigail walked to the shelf and picked out a children's storybook. The cover was a bit worn, but the illustrations were still vivid and bright. "This book belonged to my grandchildren when they were little," she said, handing it to Olivia. "So now it can be yours." Olivia looked at her mother, silently asking permission. Emily nodded, touched by the woman's generosity. "Thank you," Olivia exclaimed, hugging the book to her chest. "You should continue your journey before it gets dark," said Mrs. Abigail. "The road isn't safe at night for 2 women alone." Emily agreed and began gathering their things again. Olivia carefully placed the book in her toy box, making sure it was protected. "Mrs. Abigail," Emily said before leaving, "have you known Colonel Richard for long?" "I've known his family since I was a child," the woman replied. "His father was a good man, but Richard, he changed after taking over the farm. He grew greedy and lost his compassion." Emily absorbed this information. It was interesting to learn that Colonel Richard hadn't always been so cruel, though it didn't lessen her anger toward him. "Was there something specific that changed him?" Emily asked, curious. Mrs. Abigail hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "There were some financial troubles about 10 years ago," she finally said. "He nearly lost the farm. Ever since, he's been obsessed with money and land." Emily filed this information away in her memory. Perhaps in the future, it would be useful to know more about Colonel Richard Thornton's history and his vulnerabilities. "Thank you for everything, Mrs. Abigail," said Emily, hugging the elderly woman. "You saved our day." "Take care," replied Mrs. Abigail, stroking Olivia's hair. And don't give up on your dreams. Sometimes life knocks us down, but we can always get back up again. Emily and Olivia resumed their walk with renewed spirits. The food and rest had done them both good, and Mrs. Abigail's kindness had restored some of Emily's faith in humanity. "Mom, Mrs. Abigail was really nice," Olivia remarked as they walked. "She was, my dear," Emily agreed. "There are good people in the world, and we just met one of them." The road continued, winding through green fields and small rural properties. Occasionally, a car or truck would pass by, kicking up a cloud of dust that made Emily and Olivia cough and cover their faces with their hands. After 2 more hours of walking, they finally spotted the first signs of town. Streetlights began appearing along the road, and houses closer together signaled they were nearing the urban area. "Are we there, Mom?" Olivia asked, relieved. "Almost, my dear," Emily replied. "Soon we'll find a place to rest." The town of St. Mary was small, with about 15,000 residents. The streets were paved with cobblestones, and most houses were painted in light colors. The town center revolved around an old church in a small square where locals gathered on weekends. Emily checked the paper Mrs. Abigail had given her and asked for directions to Mrs. Florence's house. A fruit vendor gave them detailed instructions, and soon they stood in front of a 2-story yellow house. Emily took a deep breath before knocking. She knew the next few minutes could determine where she and Olivia would sleep that night. A middle-aged woman answered the door. She had brown hair tied in a ponytail and wore a simple but well-kept dress. "Good afternoon," Emily greeted. "Are you Mrs. Florence? Mrs. Abigail gave us your address. We're looking for a room to rent." Mrs. Florence studied Emily and Olivia, quickly assessing the situation. She noticed the exhaustion on their faces and the simplicity of their clothes and belongings. "A Mrs. Abigail, huh?" she said, smiling. "That woman has a heart as big as the world. Come in, let's talk." Mrs. Florence's house was tidy and clean. The living room had old but well-maintained furniture, and there was a pleasant scent of lavender in the air. "Did you come from far away?" Mrs. Florence asked, offering them seats on the sofa. "From Colonel Richard Thornton's farm," Emily replied. "We were evicted today." Mrs. Florence nodded understandingly. She had heard similar stories from others who had come to town seeking a fresh start. "I have a room on the 2nd floor," she said. "It's small, but it has a double bed and a closet. The bathroom is shared with the other tenants." "How much is it?" Emily asked, worried. $200 a month, including water and electricity," Mrs. Florence answered. "But you'll need to pay at least the first week in advance." Emily quickly did the math in her head. She only had $50 in her pocket, her last savings. It wouldn't even cover a week. I don't have enough right now," Emily admitted, her cheeks burning with shame. "But I can find work and pay in a few days." Mrs. Florence studied Emily's face for a long moment. She had learned to spot desperate people who might try to deceive her, but there was something genuine in Emily's expression that moved her. "What kind of work can you do?" asked Mrs. Florence. "I can sew, cook, clean," Emily replied. "I worked in family homes before I got married. I also know how to tend a garden and work in the fields." Olivia stayed quiet, clutching her doll and watching the conversation between the 2 women. She knew their place to sleep that night depended on Mrs. Florence's answer. "Listen," Mrs. Florence finally said, "I'll make you an offer. You can stay in the room, and in return, Emily can help with housework. I have 5 tenants, and sometimes it's hard to keep everything clean and organized by myself." Emily felt a wave of relief and gratitude. It was more than she could have hoped for under the circumstances. "I accept," she said immediately. "I can start working right away." "Easy now," Mrs. Florence laughed. "First, you need to rest and settle in. Tomorrow we'll talk about the house routine." She stood up and took a key hanging from a hook on the wall. "Come, I'll show you the room." The 3 climbed a wooden staircase that creaked softly with each step. The 2nd floor had a narrow hallway with 4 doors. Mrs. Florence opened the last door on the right and turned on the light. The room was small, as she had warned, but clean and tidy. There was a double bed with white sheets, a dark wooden wardrobe, and a small window overlooking the backyard. "The bathroom is at the end of the hall," Mrs. Florence explained. "There are clean towels in the bathroom cabinet. Feel free to use them." Olivia ran to the window and stretched to look outside. There was a small yard with a few fruit trees and a clothesline with laundry drying in the sun. "Can I play in the yard, Mommy?" Olivia asked. "Of course you can, sweetheart," Mrs. Florence replied before Emily could speak. "Just be careful not to step on the plants." Emily began unpacking their belongings onto the bed, arranging the clothes and personal items they had brought. It was strange to see an entire family's life fitting into so few possessions. "Is there a hospital or clinic in town?" Emily asked. "Yes, there is. Why? Is someone sick?" Mrs. Florence responded, concerned. No, Emily hurried to say. "It's just that I have some experience caring for the sick. I thought maybe I could find work there." "Interesting," Mrs. Florence said. "The head nurse at the hospital is Sister Elizabeth. She's a very kind nun. Maybe she has an opening for an assistant." Emily mentally noted that information. Caring for the sick was something she knew well, having tended to her husband during the last months of his illness. "There's also the public school," Mrs. Florence continued, looking at Olivia. "Classes start next week. You'll need to enroll her." Olivia stopped exploring the room and looked at her mother. The idea of a new school was both exciting and scary. "It'll be nice to make new friends," Emily said, stroking her daughter's hair. "The children here are well behaved," Mrs. Florence assured, "and the teacher, Mrs. Bennett, is very patient with new students." After Mrs. Florence left, Emily and Olivia finished settling into the room. It was the first moment of privacy they'd had since leaving the farm that morning. "I'm scared, Mommy," Olivia admitted, hugging her doll tightly. Emily sat on the bed and pulled her daughter close. She was scared too, but she knew she had to be strong for her. "I know, my love," Emily said softly. "I'm scared too, but we'll be okay. We're brave, and we'll manage to start over here." "Do you promise we won't have to leave here too?" asked Olivia. Emily hesitated before answering. She couldn't make a promise she might not be able to keep, but she also didn't want to burden her daughter with more uncertainty. "I'll do everything I can so we can stay here," Emily promised. "And if for some reason we have to leave, it'll be because we found an even better place." Olivia seemed to accept this answer and nestled into her mother's arms. Emily looked out the window and watched the street activity. People walked calmly, children played on the sidewalk, and there was a sense of peace that contrasted sharply with the emotional chaos they had experienced that day. That night, Emily lay in bed with Olivia beside her and stared at the ceiling for hours. Her mind was full of worries about the future, but also with a fierce determination to build a better life for herself and her daughter. The next morning, Emily woke up early and let Olivia sleep while she went downstairs to talk with Mrs. Florence about the house routine. The boarding house owner was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for the tenants. "Good morning." "Emily," greeted Mrs. Florence, did you sleep well?" "Yes, thank you," Emily replied. "What time do people usually wake up here?" "The tenants leave for work between 6 and 7 in the morning," Mrs. Florence explained. "I prepare a simple breakfast and they pack lunches. Your job would be to help clean the rooms, wash the bedding, and assist in the kitchen." Emily nodded, taking in the information. It seemed like work she could handle well. "What about Olivia?" Emily asked. "Can I let her play in the backyard while I work?" "Of course," Mrs. Florence answered. "In fact, she can help. Tend the garden out back. I've been growing some vegetables, but I don't have much time to dedicate to them." Emily smiled. The mention of the garden reminded her of the small plot they had left behind at the farm, and the thought of Olivia being able to keep tending to plants made her happy. The first days at Mrs. Florence's boarding house passed quickly. Emily adjusted well to the house routine, and Olivia explored every corner of the backyard, making friends with the birds that visited the fruit trees. On the third day, Emily decided to look for additional work at the hospital. She put on her best clothes, carefully combed her hair, and headed to the town center. The St. Mary Community Hospital was a simple 2-story building, painted white and blue. Emily entered through the reception and asked to speak with Sister Elizabeth. "Sister is very busy today," the receptionist said. "Can you come back tomorrow?" Emily was about to agree when she heard commotion coming from the hallway. A woman was shouting and several people were rushing back and forth. "What's happening?" Emily asked. One of the aides didn't show up today, and we have a critical patient who needs constant care, the receptionist explained, worried. Emily didn't hesitate. She knew this was her chance to prove herself. I can help, she said. I have experience caring for the sick. The receptionist looked at her in surprise, but given the urgency of the situation, she decided to call Sister Elizabeth. A few minutes later, a woman around 40 years old, dressed in a white habit, appeared at the reception. Sister Elizabeth had a calm face, but her eyes showed the weight of the situation. You said you have experience, she asked Emily directly. Yes, sister, Emily replied. I cared for my husband for months when he was ill. I know how to give injections, administer medicine on time, and tend to wounds. Sister Elizabeth studied Emily's face for a moment, assessing her sincerity. Come with me, she decided. Let's see how you do. Emily was led to a room where an elderly man who had suffered a serious fall was being treated. He was conscious but in a lot of pain and needed help to move. Mr. Thompson here needs his dressings changed every 2 hours, explained Sister Elizabeth. He also needs his medication on schedule and assistance with meals. Emily approached the patient gently. There was something in her manner of moving and speaking that put people at ease. Good morning, Mr. Thompson, she greeted with a warm smile. My name is Emily, and I'll be taking care of you today. You have a knack for this, observed Sister Elizabeth after watching Emily interact with the patient for a few minutes. Where did you learn to care for the sick? I learned out of necessity, Emily replied honestly. When you love someone who's suffering, you quickly learn how to help. Sister Elizabeth nodded in understanding. She'd seen many people with diplomas, but without the genuine compassion that made a difference in patient care. If you do well today, I can offer you a temporary job, Sister Elizabeth said. We need someone to cover for absent aides and help on weekends. Emily's heart raced with joy. This was exactly the kind of opportunity she'd been waiting for. I'll do my best, she promised. Throughout the day, Emily cared for Mr. Thompson and 2 other patients who also needed assistance. She changed dressings, helped with meals, talked to the patients to distract them from their pain, and even read passages from the Bible to an elderly woman who was feeling very lonely. By the end of the day, Sister Elizabeth was impressed with Emily's performance. You have a natural gift for this, she said. Would you like to work here 3 days a week? The pay isn't much, but it could help with your expenses. Emily accepted immediately. It was the first real step toward financial independence since she'd been forced off the farm. When she got home, Olivia greeted her in the backyard, covered in dirt, but with a radiant smile on her face. Mommy, look what I planted, Olivia exclaimed, pointing to a row of tomato seedlings she had arranged in small pots. It's beautiful, sweetheart, Emily said, hugging Olivia without minding the dirt. And I have good news. I got a job at the hospital. Olivia jumped for joy, and for the first time since they'd left the farm, Emily felt they might truly be able to rebuild their lives. That night, as Olivia slept, Emily sat by the small bedroom window and gazed at the stars. Her thoughts drifted to Colonel Richard Thornton's farm, and she wondered if he'd noticed that the garden she and Olivia had tended was beginning to wither without their care. Part of her still felt anger toward the farmer, but another part was starting to focus on the future rather than the past. Emily didn't know it then, but her story with Colonel Richard Thornton was far from over. In the weeks that followed, Emily settled into a routine. She worked at the hospital 3 days a week and managed the boarding house on the other days. Olivia was enrolled in the local school and quickly made friends with other children in the neighborhood. Mrs. Florence proved to be a fair and understanding employer. She allowed Emily to take extra food to their room on days when Olivia couldn't go to school due to minor health issues. About a month after their arrival in town, Emily was at the Central Market buying vegetables when she overheard a conversation between 2 men that caught her attention. Colonel Richard Thornton is having money troubles again, one of them said. I heard he's got several overdue debts. It's not the first time, replied the other. That man never learned to manage money properly. All he knows is spending and buying more land. Emily pretended to be focused on choosing tomatoes, but she listened carefully to every word of the conversation. I heard he's thinking of selling some of the smaller properties. The first man continued, the ones farthest from the main ranch. Who'd buy land from him around here? Everyone knows his reputation, said the second man. Emily absorbed this information with growing interest. If Colonel Richard Thornton was really in financial trouble, maybe there was an opportunity there. She didn't know how yet, but something inside her stirred at the news of the man's struggles, the same man who had thrown them out of their home. When she got back, Emily told Mrs. Florence what she'd overheard at the market. "Doesn't surprise me," said Mrs. Florence. "Colonel Richard has always been a big spender. His father left the ranch in good shape, but the son never had the same knack for business." "Do you know what kind of debts he has?" Emily asked curiously. "They say he owes money to the bank, to feed suppliers, even to some of the workers," Mrs. Florence replied. "I've also heard rumors he lost a lot of money betting on horse races." Emily filed all this information away. A vague plan began forming in her mind, one that excited her for the first time in months. That night, after Olivia fell asleep, Emily took out an old notebook and started writing down everything she knew about Colonel Richard's financial situation. She also calculated how much money she could save from working at the hospital and the boarding house. The numbers weren't encouraging. Even pinching every penny, it would take years to save enough for any meaningful investment. But Emily was a determined woman, and she'd survived worse than a lack of money. The next month, Emily decided to increase her income by offering sewing services to the neighbors. She'd brought an old sewing machine from the ranch, one that had belonged to her mother, and her sewing skills were well known in the rural area where she'd lived. "I can do repairs, alterations, even make new pieces," Emily offered to Mrs. Florence. "What a wonderful idea," Mrs. Florence exclaimed. "I have several clothes that need adjustments, and I know others who could use that kind of service too." Quickly, word spread through the neighborhood that a skilled seamstress was living at Mrs. Florence's boarding house. Emily began receiving regular orders, and her monthly income doubled. Olivia contributed in her own way too. She'd taken charge of the vegetable garden behind the boarding house, and the greens she grew not only helped cut food costs, but were also sold to neighbors. "Olivia, you have a special gift with plants," Mrs. Florence praised one day, watching the girl tenderly care for each seedling. "My mom taught me," Olivia replied proudly. "At the ranch where we lived before, we had a big garden." Mrs. Florence smiled, but Emily noticed a shadow of sadness cross the older woman's face. She knew Mrs. Florence had no children and sometimes showed a maternal affection for Olivia. That touched Emily's heart. 3 months after arriving in town, Emily had managed to save nearly $1,000. It was far more money than she thought possible in such a short time. Between her work at the hospital, the boarding house, and her sewing, she was earning a steady and growing income. It was around then that she received an unexpected visit. Mrs. Abigail, the woman who'd helped them the day they were thrown off the ranch, showed up at the boarding house looking for Emily. "Mrs. Abigail!" Emily exclaimed, hugging the elderly woman. "What a lovely surprise. How did you know where we were?" "I asked around town," replied Mrs. Abigail. "I wanted to see how you two were doing." Olivia ran from the backyard to greet Mrs. Abigail, still holding a watering can in her small hands. "Look how much you've grown, dear," said Mrs. Abigail, stroking Olivia's hair. "And you're all dirty from the soil. Do you still enjoy tending to plants?" "I love it," Olivia replied. "Come see my garden." While Olivia proudly showed off her plants to Mrs. Abigail, Emily prepared coffee and cookies. When the three of them sat down in the boarding house's living room, Mrs. Abigail revealed the real reason for her visit. "Emily, I need to tell you a few things about Colonel Richard Thornton," she said, lowering her voice. Emily leaned forward, intrigued. "What happened?" "He's in serious financial trouble," Mrs. Abigail explained. "Worse than most people realize. I heard he might be forced to sell parts of the ranch to pay off his debts." "Which parts?" asked Emily, her heart racing. "Mostly the land farthest from the main house," Mrs. Abigail replied, "including the area where you used to live." Emily felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, there was satisfaction in knowing the man who had treated them so poorly was struggling. On the other, she began to see an opportunity forming. "How much would it cost to buy a piece of land like that?" Emily asked, trying to sound casual. Mrs. Abigail looked at her in surprise. Are you thinking of buying land? Emily, that would cost a fortune, probably tens of thousands of dollars. Emily nodded, but her mind was already calculating. If she could maintain her current savings and maybe find ways to increase her income, it might not be such an impossible dream. Just curious, Emily said, not wanting to reveal her still vague plans. There's more, Mrs. Abigail continued. Colonel Richard Thornton evicted 2 more families last month. He's getting desperate to cut costs. Olivia, who had been quietly listening to the adults' conversation, suddenly spoke up. Mommy, if we had a lot of money, we could buy the little house where we used to live, and then no one could ever make us leave again, right? Emily smiled at her daughter, impressed by the girl's insight. That's an interesting idea, sweetheart, Emily said, but first we'd need to save a whole lot of money. I can help by selling more vegetables, Olivia offered seriously. Mrs. Abigail laughed at the girl's determination, but Emily saw something deeper in the conversation. Olivia had grown so much emotionally since they'd been forced off the ranch. The insecurity of not having a home of her own had taught the girl the value of stability and independence. After Mrs. Abigail left, Emily remained thoughtful for the rest of the day. That night, once Olivia was asleep, she took out her notebook and began making more detailed calculations. If she could maintain her 3 income streams and expand her sewing business, she might save around $500 a month. In 2 years, she'd have $12,000. It wouldn't be enough to buy land, but it would be a respectable start. Emily also began thinking of other ways to increase her income. Maybe she could offer cleaning services to other homes in town, or expand the garden and sell more produce. Every little extra source of income would bring her closer to her goal. The vision was growing clearer in her mind. She wanted to buy back the piece of land where she'd once lived with her family, not just for sentimental reasons, but as proof that she had overcome the humiliation of being forced out. She wanted to prove, to herself, to Olivia, and to Colonel Richard Thornton, that they were stronger than he'd ever imagined. In the following weeks, Emily put her plan into action. She began offering cleaning services twice a week for a wealthy family in town. She also expanded the vegetable garden, planting more varieties of greens and starting to sell at the town market on Saturdays. Olivia continued to do well in school and had become one of the top students in her class. Mrs. Bennett, the teacher, often praised the girl's intelligence and maturity to Mrs. Florence. Olivia is a special child, Mrs. Bennett told Emily during a parent-teacher meeting. She has an impressive ability to focus for her age and shows great responsibility. Emily was proud of her daughter, but also worried. Olivia had been forced to grow up quickly because of the difficult circumstances they had faced. Sometimes Emily wondered if the girl was missing out on part of her childhood. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Olivia said one evening as Emily helped her with homework. "Of course, sweetheart. What is it?" "Can you teach me how to count money properly?" Olivia asked. "I want to help you with our household finances." Emily was touched by her daughter's request. Olivia was showing a genuine interest in contributing to the family's goals. "I'll teach you," Emily promised. "But first, you have to promise me you'll keep being a kid and playing with your friends." "I promise," Olivia smiled, "but I also want to be responsible like you." Emily hugged her daughter, feeling a mix of pride and melancholy. Olivia was becoming an admirable young woman, but Emily wished circumstances had allowed her to remain a carefree child a little longer. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 6 months after arriving in town, Emily had managed to save $3,000. It was significant progress, but still far from the amount needed to buy land. She knew she needed to speed up the process somehow. That's when an unexpected opportunity arose. Sister Elizabeth called her for a private conversation at the hospital. "Emily, I have a proposal for you," the nun said. "I've been impressed with your work here. The patients adore you, and you've shown a lot of knowledge about medical care." Emily waited, curious about what would come next. "The hospital received funding to train nursing assistants," Sister Elizabeth continued. "It's a 6-month course, completely free. If you graduate, You could work here full-time with a much better salary. Emily's heart raced. This was exactly the kind of opportunity she needed to significantly increase her income. I'd love to take the course, Emily replied immediately. When would it start? Next month, said Sister Elizabeth. Classes would be 3 times a week in the afternoon. You could keep working on the other days, so you don't lose all your income. Emily quickly calculated how she'd rearrange her schedule. Balancing the course with all her jobs would be challenging, but it would be worth it in the long run. I accept, Emily decided. I'll give it my all. When she shared the news with Olivia that night, the girl was thrilled. You're going to become a real nurse? Olivia asked, impressed. A nursing assistant, Emily corrected. But yes, I'll have a diploma and everything. I'm proud of you, Mom, Olivia said, hugging Emily tightly. That night, Emily could barely sleep from excitement. She saw the course as a crucial step toward her goals. With a better salary as a certified nursing assistant, she could save much faster. The nursing assistant course began the following month. Emily discovered she had a natural aptitude for learning about anatomy, medications, and medical procedures. Her classmates came from various ages and backgrounds, but they all shared the desire to help others. You have a real talent for this, said Sarah, a classmate who had become Emily's friend. Did you ever study medicine before? No, Emily replied. I learned everything by taking care of my husband when he was sick. Practical experience is worth a lot, Sarah noted. Sometimes it's more valuable than years of theory. Emily threw herself into her studies. At night, after Olivia fell asleep, she pored over her course books by the dim light of the bedside lamp. On weekends, she practiced procedures with Sarah and other classmates. Olivia also supported her mother's studies. She made sure to stay quiet when Emily was working and even helped by summarizing some of the simpler subjects. Mom, did you know the heart beats over 100,000 times a day? Olivia said one day after reading one of Emily's books. Where did you learn that? Emily asked, surprised. It's right here in your anatomy book, Olivia replied, pointing to the page. It's really interesting. Can I read more? Emily was impressed by her daughter's interest in medical studies. Olivia was absorbing knowledge far beyond her years, yet she showed a genuine understanding of what she read. During the course, Emily also learned about healthcare administration and management. One subject covered how to calculate treatment costs and organize budgets for clinics and hospitals. These lessons sparked a new interest in her. She began applying the financial management concepts she learned to her own life. She created detailed spreadsheets tracking expenses and income, set monthly savings goals, and developed strategies to cut costs without sacrificing their quality of life. You're turning into quite the businesswoman, Mrs. Florence teased, watching Emily work on her spreadsheets at the kitchen table. I'm just learning to be more organized, Emily replied. If I want to reach my goals, I need to be strategic. And what are those goals? Mrs. Florence asked curiously. Emily hesitated for a moment. She hadn't told anyone yet about her plan to buy land from Colonel Richard Thornton. I want to give Olivia a better life, Emily said, which wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. Mrs. Florence nodded understandingly. She had grown very fond of Emily and Olivia, and sometimes mentioned how she wished they could stay at the boarding house forever. In the 4th month of the course, Emily received another unexpected visit from Mrs. Abigail. This time, the elderly woman brought even more interesting news about Colonel Richard Thornton. He's being sued by 3 different creditors, Mrs. Abigail shared, and there are rumors the bank will foreclose on the farm if he can't pay off his overdue loans. Emily absorbed this information with growing interest. The Colonel's troubles seemed to be escalating quickly. How long does he have to settle the debts? Emily asked. They say until the end of the year, Mrs. Abigail replied. If he can't, he'll have to sell the entire farm, or at least most of it. Emily did quick mental calculations. There were 8 months left in the year. If she graduated from the course and secured the full-time job at the hospital, she could save much more in those 8 months. It might not be enough to buy the whole farm, but it could cover some of the smaller properties. Mrs. Abigail, do you know how a land auction works? Emily asked. I know a little, the older woman replied. Why are you interested? Emily decided to trust Mrs. Abigail. The woman had proven herself to be loyal and discreet, and Emily needed advice from someone with more experience. "I'm thinking of trying to buy the land where we used to live," Emily admitted. "I know it might sound crazy, but I'm saving money and learning about business." Mrs. Abigail looked at Emily with surprise, but then her face lit up with admiration. "What a fantastic idea," she exclaimed. "It would be poetic justice. But do you have any idea how much money would be needed?" "Not yet," Emily admitted. "But I'm learning how to research these things, and even if I can't buy that exact property, maybe I can buy another piece of land in the area." Mrs. Abigail spent the next few minutes explaining to Emily what she knew about court auctions and how buying rural land worked. It was valuable information that Emily absorbed with full attention. "The most important thing," Mrs. Abigail advised, "is to have the money on hand when the opportunity arises. In auctions, there's no time to secure loans or financing." This conversation motivated Emily even more. She intensified all her efforts to increase her income and save money. She began working 6 days a week instead of 5, took on more sewing orders, and expanded the vegetable garden even further. Olivia noticed her mother was working harder and tried to help whenever possible. She took on more responsibilities at home, like washing dishes and organizing their room, so Emily could dedicate more time to paid work. "Mum, are you tired?" Olivia asked one day, noticing the dark circles under Emily's eyes. "A little," Emily admitted, "but it's temporary. I'm working hard now, so our life will be easier in the future." "Can I help more?" Olivia offered. "I could sell vegetables at the market by myself on Saturday." Emily was touched by her daughter's offer, but also worried. Olivia was only 10 years old and still too young to take on adult responsibilities. "You already help me so much, sweetheart," Emily said, hugging Olivia. "And your main responsibility right now is to study and be a child." "But I want to help you achieve your dreams," Olivia insisted. Emily realized her daughter was growing up with impressive maturity. The hardships they had faced together were creating a strong partnership between them. "All right," Emily relented. "You can help me at the market on Saturdays, but only for a few hours, and then you'll go play with your friends." Olivia agreed eagerly. The following Saturday, mother and daughter worked together at the town market. Olivia showed a natural talent for sales, chatting with customers and explaining how the vegetables had been grown. "This girl has a knack for business," remarked a regular customer, watching Olivia carefully arrange the produce. "She learns fast," Emily agreed proudly. By the end of the day at the market, they had sold all the vegetables and even received orders for the following week. Olivia's contribution had significantly boosted sales. "We make a good team," Olivia said, counting the money from the sales. "Yes, we do," Emily agreed. "We're a great team, you and I." That night, Emily updated her financial spreadsheets and discovered she was managing to save nearly $700 a month. It was far more than she had ever imagined possible when they first arrived in town. There were just 2 months left until she would graduate from her nursing assistant course. Sister Elizabeth had already confirmed there would be a full-time position for Emily at the hospital as soon as she graduated. The salary would be double what she currently earned, part-time. Emily calculated that if she could maintain this pace and increase her income with the new job, she could have between $15,000 and $20,000 saved by the end of the year. She still didn't know if it would be enough, but it was. Far more than they'd had when they first arrived in town, with just $50 in their pocket. One afternoon, while studying at the town library, Emily decided to research land prices in the area. She found some old newspaper listings and began to understand the rural real estate market better. Prices varied widely depending on location, soil quality, and property size. Land closer to town was more expensive, while more remote rural properties were more affordable. Emily noted all the relevant details and started creating a profile of properties she could realistically afford with the money she hoped to save. That evening, she shared her findings with Olivia. "Mum, do you really think we'll be able to buy our own land?" Olivia asked, looking at the numbers Emily had written down. "I don't know if we'll manage it this year," Emily answered honestly, "but we're on the right path. And even if it takes longer, we'll get there." Olivia nodded seriously. At 10 years old, she had already learned that important goals take time and effort. "And when we have our land, "Can we plant a huge garden?" Olivia asked excitedly. "We'll plant the biggest garden in the region," Emily promised with a smile. 2 weeks before her course graduation, Emily received a visit that would completely change the course of her plans. Mrs. Abigail appeared at the boarding house with an urgent expression. "Emily, I need to tell you something important," she said, as soon as they sat down to talk. "What happened?" "Colonel Richard Thornton couldn't pay his debts," Mrs. Abigail explained. "The foreclosure auction is scheduled for next month." Emily's heart raced. This was much sooner than she had planned. "Which properties will be auctioned?" she asked. "All of them," Mrs. Abigail replied. "The entire farm will be divided into lots and sold to settle the debts." Emily absorbed the news with a mix of excitement and panic. This was the opportunity she'd been waiting for, but it had come before she was fully prepared. "How much money have you managed to save?" Mrs. Abigail asked. "About $5,000, Emily answered. "And I'll get another $2,000 when I graduate from the course." Mrs. Abigail looked thoughtful. "It might not be enough for the larger lots, but it could be enough for some of the smaller properties," she said, "especially if there aren't many interested buyers." Emily spent the next few days researching everything she could about the auction. She discovered that the lot, including the house where they had lived, would be one of the first to be auctioned. The minimum bid was set at $8,000, exactly the amount Emily had hoped to save by the end of the year, but she was still 3 months short. She needed to find a way to earn more quickly or borrow the money. Emily considered applying for a bank loan, but knew her current income wouldn't be enough to qualify for such a large amount. She also thought about asking Mrs. Florence or other acquaintances for help, but didn't feel comfortable putting others in debt. That's when Olivia made an unexpected suggestion. "Mom, what if we sold our sewing machine?" the girl said. "You told me it's worth a lot of money." Emily paused to think. The sewing machine was indeed worth about $1,500 and was one of her most valuable possessions, but it was also her main source of extra income. "If I sell the machine, I won't be able to do sewing jobs anymore," Emily explained. "But if we buy the land, you can buy another machine later," Olivia argued, "and we'll get our house back." Emily was impressed by her daughter's reasoning. Olivia was right. Selling the machine would be a short-term sacrifice that could lead to a much greater gain in the long run. "It's a risky idea," said Emily. "If we don't manage to buy the land at the auction, we'll be left without the machine and without the money." "But if we don't try, we'll never know if we could have succeeded," Olivia replied. Emily spent the whole night thinking about her daughter's suggestion. It was indeed a big risk, but perhaps the only way to gather enough money to have a real chance at the auction. The next day, Emily spoke with Mrs. Florence about her situation. "You're thinking of bidding at the auction?" Mrs. Florence asked, surprised. "Emily, that's very risky. What if you lose all the money you've saved?" "I know it's risky," Emily admitted, "but it's the only opportunity I'll have to get my own property. If I don't try now, I might never get another chance like this." Mrs. Florence studied Emily's determined face. Over the months they had lived together, she had watched her tenant transform from a desperate woman into a focused and hard-working person. "If this is what you truly want," Mrs. Florence finally said, "then I'll support you. But promise me you'll be careful and won't bet more money than you can afford to lose." Emily promised, though she knew she was planning to stake nearly everything she had. That week, Emily sold the sewing machine to a neighbor for $1,400. It was hard to part with the object that had belonged to her mother and represented her financial independence, but she knew it was necessary. With the money from the machine, her savings and what she would receive upon graduating from her course, Emily calculated she would have about $8,500. It was enough to participate in the auction, but left no room for mistakes. Olivia followed her mother's preparations with a mix of excitement and nervousness. She knew they were betting everything on a single opportunity. "Mum, what if someone offers more money than us?" Olivia asked. "Then we'll accept that it wasn't meant to be this time," Emily replied, "but at least we'll know we tried." The week before the auction, Emily graduated from her nursing assistant course. She had been one of the top students in her class and received special praise from all her instructors. "So you have a bright future in healthcare," Sister Elizabeth said during the graduation ceremony. and I'm looking forward to having you work full-time at the hospital." Emily thanked her, but her mind was fixed on the auction just 3 days away. She had studied all the documents related to the properties up for bid and had chosen 3 lots she could realistically try to buy. The first was the lot that included the house they had lived in. The second was a smaller plot, but with access to the main road. The third was a more distant property, but with highly fertile soil for farming. Emily planned to focus her efforts on the first lot, but wanted backup options in case the price went beyond her means. The night before the auction, Emily barely slept. Olivia was restless too, and the two stayed up late talking about their plans for the future. "If we get the land, will we build a new house or fix up the one that's already there?" Olivia asked. "First, we'll fix up the existing house," Emily planned. "Then, if all goes well, maybe we can build something bigger." "And will we have animals?" Olivia continued. "We can have a few chickens and maybe a goat," Emily said. "But first, we need to learn how to take care of the land properly." Olivia smiled, imagining herself tending to animals and planting in a garden much larger than the one they had behind the boarding house. On the morning of the auction, Emily put on her best dress and carefully styled her hair. She wanted to make a good impression and be taken seriously by the other participants. Olivia asked to go with her mother, but Emily thought it best for the girl to stay at the boarding house with Mrs. Florence. It was a very important and tense occasion, and Emily needed to be completely focused. "Wish me luck," Emily asked before leaving. "We'll wish and pray for you," promised Mrs. Florence, hugging Emily affectionately. The auction would take place in the town square, in front of the courthouse. When Emily arrived, several people had already gathered. She recognized some local farmers, a few town merchants, and some unfamiliar faces. Emily introduced herself to the auctioneer and confirmed her registration to participate. She had deposited $1,000 as a guarantee, as required by the notice. While waiting for the auction to begin, Emily observed the other participants. Most were middle-aged men, dressed in expensive clothes and confidently discussing large sums of money. For a moment, Emily felt intimidated. She was likely the youngest person there and certainly the one with the least money among all the participants. But she reminded herself of all the effort she had made to get there and focused on her determination. The auction started promptly at 10 in the morning. The auctioneer explained the rules and began offering the first lots. Emily watched carefully how the process worked and how the other participants placed their bids. The first lots were the most valuable properties, and the prices quickly rose far beyond what Emily could afford. She waited patiently, knowing the lots she was interested in would come later. Finally, it was time for the lot that included the house where Emily and Olivia had lived. The auctioneer described the property: 2 acres of land, a well-maintained wooden house, access to the main road, and an artesian well. "Lot number 15, announced the auctioneer. "Minimum bid, $8,000. Emily raised her hand immediately. $8,000 from the lady in the blue blouse, said the auctioneer, pointing at Emily. Another participant bid $8,500. Emily countered with $9,000. The man raised it to $9,500. Emily felt her heart race. The price was already nearing her limit, but she decided to keep going. $10,000, Emily said, her voice steady. There was a moment of silence. The man competing with her seemed to hesitate. Emily held her breath, hoping he would give up. $10,500, the man finally said. Emily quickly calculated. She had $8,500 available for the auction. She could only make one more bid, and even then she'd be left with no reserve money. $11,000, Emily said, with all the conviction she could muster. The man looked at her curiously, as if trying to figure out who this woman was competing so determinedly for this specific lot. $11,500, he said after a moment. Emily felt her world collapse. She couldn't make another bid. She had reached the absolute limit of her financial means. The auctioneer waited a few seconds to see if Emily would bid again. $11,000 was the last bid, he asked, looking at Emily. Emily opened her mouth to respond, but before she could say anything, a familiar voice rang out from the crowd. $12,000. Emily turned, shocked to see Mrs. Abigail walking toward her, a determined expression on her face. "Mrs. Abigail," Emily whispered, "what are you doing?" "Helping a friend," Mrs. Abigail replied softly. "We'll talk later." The man competing with them seemed surprised by the new bid. He looked at Mrs. Abigail, then at Emily, and appeared to decide it wasn't worth continuing. "$12,000 is the final bid," announced the auctioneer. "Going once, going twice, and sold to the silver-haired lady for $12,000. Emily couldn't believe what had just happened. In a matter of minutes, she had gone from the devastation of losing the auction to the joy of securing the property. "Mrs. Abigail, I can't accept this," Emily said, tears in her eyes. "I don't have a way to pay the $12,000. "Don't worry, dear," Mrs. Abigail replied with a smile. "We'll figure it out later. For now, let's complete the purchase." Emily followed Mrs. Abigail to the auctioneer's table to finalize the paperwork. Her mind was in a whirl, but her heart raced with joy and gratitude. Once all the documents were signed and payments processed, the two stepped away from the crowd to talk privately. "Mrs. Abigail, why did you do this?" Emily asked. "And where did this money come from?" "Emily, you inspired me," the older woman answered. "Over these past months, seeing your determination and courage reminded me how important it is to fight for our dreams." Mrs. Abigail explained that she had sold a piece of land she'd owned for years, but had no use for. With the money from the sale, she decided to help Emily achieve her goal. "But I can't accept this as a gift," Emily insisted. "I need to find a way to pay you back." "It's not a gift," Mrs. Abigail clarified. "It's a loan. You can repay me whenever you can. No interest, no rush. The important thing is that you and Olivia have your land back." Emily hugged Mrs. Abigail tightly, unable to hold back her tears of gratitude. "How can I ever thank you?" she asked. "By taking good care of that land and being happy there," Mrs. Abigail replied. "And by teaching Olivia that dreams can come true when we work hard for them." Emily rushed back to the boarding house to share the news with Olivia. When she arrived, she found the girl nervously tending to the plants in the yard while waiting for updates. "Olivia," Emily called out as soon as she stepped into the yard. "We did it! We bought our land!" Olivia dropped the watering can and ran into her mother's arms. They hugged and cried with joy, not caring that they were getting dirt on each other. "Is it true, Mom?" Olivia asked, still in disbelief. "Is the little house really ours again?" "It's ours, my dear," Emily confirmed. "No one will ever take it from us again." Mrs. Florence appeared at the kitchen door, drawn by the commotion in the yard. When she heard the news, she was moved too. "I'm so happy for you both," Mrs. Florence said, embracing Emily and Olivia. "But I'll miss having you here terribly." Emily realized she had been so focused on buying the land that she hadn't considered how hard it would be to leave Mrs. Florence, who had become a dear friend. "You can visit us any time," Emily offered. "And we'll still see each other in town? And you can help us with the new garden," Olivia added. Mrs. Florence smiled through her tears. "I'll miss having you live here, but I'm so proud to see how far you've come and how you've achieved your dreams." That night, Emily and Olivia made detailed plans for their move. They decided to stay one more week at the boarding house, to organize everything and say proper goodbyes to the town where they had rebuilt their lives. Emily also planned to start her new job at the hospital the following week. With the salary from her full-time nursing assistant job, she would have a stable income that would allow her to pay Mrs. Abigail gradually and still invest in improving the property. "Mom, when we move, will it feel like we're going back home?" Olivia asked. "It'll be better than going back home," Emily replied, "because now that house is truly ours. No one can ever take it away from us again." Olivia smiled and hugged her favorite doll, the same one she had carried the day they were forced off the farm. "Our doll is going home too," Olivia whispered to the toy. Emily watched her daughter and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Olivia had learned one of life's most important lessons, that it's possible to overcome hardships and achieve seemingly impossible goals through hard work, determination, and perseverance. A week later, Emily and Olivia were back on the rural property that now belonged to them. The wooden house seemed smaller than Emily remembered, and it needed some repairs, but it was structurally sound. "Look, Mom," Olivia exclaimed, running toward the garden. "Some of the plants are still alive." Emily walked over and saw that a few of the vegetables they had planted months earlier had survived on their own. Small tomatoes were ripening on the vine, and some aromatic herbs were still growing. "It's like they were waiting for us to come back," Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. Olivia immediately began tending to the surviving plants and planning expansions for the garden. Emily watched her daughter and realized how much she had matured during their months in the city. "We're going to make this the most beautiful garden in the whole area," Olivia promised. Emily agreed, but her mind was also focused on practical matters. She would need to find a way to commute to the hospital in town every day for work. The distance was considerable, but there were buses that made the trip. That first night back in the house, Emily and Olivia sat on the porch and watched the sunset over the land that was now theirs. It was a moment of deep satisfaction and gratitude. "Mom, do you think Colonel Richard Thornton knows it was us who bought the land?" Olivia asked. Emily had wondered the same thing. At the auction, she hadn't seen Colonel Richard Thornton anywhere, but that didn't mean he didn't know the outcome. "He'll probably find out eventually," Emily replied. "But it doesn't matter. This land is legally ours now, and there's nothing he can do about it." Olivia nodded, but Emily could see the girl still held some fear toward the farm's former owner. "He can't be mean to us anymore, right, Mum?" Olivia asked. "No, he can't," Emily assured her. "And if he tries, we'll know how to stand our ground." In the following days, Emily settled into a routine of working at the hospital and tending to the property. She woke up early, dropped Olivia off at school in town, worked at the hospital during the day, and returned home in the evening. Olivia quickly adjusted to her new school and soon made friends with children from neighboring farms. Emily was happy to see her daughter fitting in well with the rural community. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after their move, Emily was in the yard hanging laundry when she spotted a familiar figure walking down the road toward the house. It was Colonel Richard Thornton. Emily's stomach tightened with nerves, but she took a deep breath and prepared for the confrontation she knew was inevitable. Colonel Richard Thornton stopped at the property gate and watched Emily for several minutes without saying a word. He looked considerably older than the last time she had seen him. "So you did it," he finally said, his voice weary. "Did what?" asked Emily, pretending not to understand. "To buy my land," replied Colonel Richard. "It took me a while to find out who made the winning bid at the auction, but now I know it was you." Emily moved closer to the gate, but kept a safe distance. She didn't know if the man came in peace or with hostile intentions. "This land is mine now," Emily said firmly. "I bought it legally at the judicial auction." "I know," admitted Colonel Richard. "I'm not here to dispute that." Emily was surprised. She had expected anger, threats, or at least hostility from him. "Then why did you come here?" she asked. Colonel Richard hesitated for a moment, as if wrestling with his own emotions. "I came to apologize," he finally said. Emily was shocked. It was the last thing she expected to hear. "Apologize?" she repeated, unable to hide her surprise. "I was unfair to you and your daughter," admitted Colonel Richard. "I evicted you when you were vulnerable, and that was wrong." Emily didn't know how to respond. For months, she had imagined this moment, but never considered the possibility of Colonel Richard showing remorse. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked. "Because losing the farm made me reflect on many things," he replied. "I realized I've become someone my father wouldn't recognize. He always treated tenants with respect and dignity." Emily absorbed his words with mixed emotions. On one hand, she appreciated the apology. On the other, she couldn't easily forget the suffering he had caused her and Olivia. "I accept your apology," Emily finally said, "but it doesn't change what happened." "I know," agreed Colonel Richard. "I don't expect your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I recognize my mistake." There was an awkward silence. Emily wasn't sure if she should invite him in or if the conversation was over. "May I ask how you got the money to buy the land?" Colonel Richard said. "I worked hard," Emily replied simply. "Very hard." Colonel Richard nodded with what seemed like respect. "I admire your determination," he said. "Not many people could have achieved what you did." Emily felt deep satisfaction hearing this acknowledgement from the man who had once doubted her ability to support herself. "What will you do now?" she asked, more out of curiosity than genuine concern. "I'll live with my brother in the capital," Colonel Richard answered. "I have some savings left after paying my debts. Maybe I can start a small business." Emily nodded. It was strange to see this man, who had once seemed so powerful and arrogant, now humble and defeated. "I hope everything works out for you," Emily said, realizing she truly meant it. Colonel Richard smiled sadly. "You're a better woman than I am a man," he said. "Take good care of this land. It deserves owners who value it." With that, he turned and walked back down the road, disappearing around the bend that led to the main highway. Emily watched until he was completely out of sight. When Olivia came home from school that afternoon, Emily told her about Colonel Richard's visit. "He really apologized?" Olivia asked, surprised. "He did," Emily confirmed. "And he seemed sincere." Olivia thought for a moment. "I'm glad he admitted he was wrong," she said, "but I'm still glad he's not our neighbor anymore." Emily laughed at her daughter's honesty. "I'm glad too," Emily admitted. "Now we can focus on our future without worrying about the past." In the following weeks, Emily and Olivia dedicated themselves to improving the property. They renovated the house, painting the walls and fixing the windows. They expanded the garden, planting a wider variety of vegetables and even some fruit trees. Emily also started raising a few chickens, as she had promised Olivia. The little girl loved taking care of the animals and quickly learned how to collect eggs and feed the birds. "Mom, I think we should name all the chickens," Olivia suggested one day. "You can name them whatever you like," Emily agreed, smiling at her daughter's joy. Olivia carefully named each chicken, choosing names that reflected their unique personalities. There was Smarty, the cleverest hen, Dizzy, who always tried to escape the coop, and Queen, who always got the best bits of food. 3 months after moving back to the property, Emily received a visit from Mrs. Florence. The boarding house owner had brought a homemade cake and wanted to see how they were adjusting to rural life. "My, how you've improved this place, Mrs. Florence exclaimed, admiring the changes they had made. "Olivia deserves the credit for the plants," Emily said. "She has a natural talent for farming." Olivia proudly showed Mrs. Florence the expanded garden, explaining each type of vegetable they were growing and the special care each plant needed. "You should consider selling your vegetables at the town market," Mrs. Florence suggested. "They're beautiful and fresh." It was an idea Emily had already considered. With the property producing its own food, and even surplus, they could have an additional source of income. "That's a good idea," Emily agreed. "We can start by selling small amounts and see how the market responds." The following month, Emily and Olivia began selling vegetables at the town market on Saturdays. The quality of their produce quickly attracted regular customers, and soon they were earning a significant amount from sales. "Look, Mom," Olivia said one Saturday, counting the money from their sales. "We made almost $200 just today." Emily was impressed. It was more than she had ever imagined earning from selling vegetables. "If we keep this up, we'll be able to pay Mrs. Abigail back much faster than I thought," Emily calculated. Emily had set up a plan to repay Mrs. Abigail in monthly installments. With her hospital income plus the market sales, she could pay $400 a month toward the loan. Mrs. Abigail visited the property regularly and was always amazed by the progress Emily and Olivia made. She had become a sort of adoptive grandmother to Olivia and a confidant to Emily. "You've turned this place into something very special," Mrs. Abigail said during one of her visits. "It's so much better than when Colonel Richard Thornton owned it." Emily took pride in hearing that. She and Olivia had truly poured love and care into every aspect of the property. A year after buying the land, Emily assessed their financial progress. She had managed to pay off almost half of Mrs. Abigail's loan and had even saved an additional $3,000. "If we keep this pace," Emily told Olivia, "we'll be able to pay off the entire debt in 2 more years." "And then can we save to buy more land?" Olivia asked. Emily smiled. Olivia had inherited not only her love for farming, but also her mother's entrepreneurial spirit. "We can consider that possibility," Emily agreed. "But first, let's focus on maximizing this property's potential." Emily had learned about modern farming techniques during her visits to the town library. She was gradually implementing composting, crop rotation, and other practices that increased the land's productivity. 2.5 years after purchasing the property, Emily finally made the final payment to Mrs. Abigail. It was a moment of great celebration for the entire extended family they had built. "Now the land is officially ours," Emily announced to Olivia. "We don't owe anyone anything anymore." Olivia, now 13 and having grown into an intelligent, responsible young woman, fully understood the significance of that moment. "We did it, Mom," she said, hugging Emily tightly. "We really did it." Emily looked around the property that had become theirs and felt a deep satisfaction. The house had been completely renovated and expanded. The vegetable garden had turned into a small productive farm. They had chickens, goats, and even a few sheep. More important than the material possessions, Emily and Olivia had built a stable and prosperous life. Olivia was among the top students in her school and showed interest in studying agriculture or veterinary medicine when she went to college. Emily continued working at the hospital and had become one of the most respected nursing assistants in the region. Sister Elizabeth often praised her for her dedication and skill. One afternoon, as Emily worked in the garden, Olivia approached with a thoughtful expression. "Mom, can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course, sweetheart. What is it?" "Do you think Dad would be proud of what we've accomplished?" Olivia asked. Emily stopped working and looked at her daughter tenderly. It was a question she often asked herself. "I'm sure he would be very proud," Emily replied, "not just of what we've built, but especially of the strong, intelligent woman you've become." Olivia smiled and went back to work. Emily watched her daughter and reflected on the extraordinary journey they had taken together. They had started as victims of injustice, thrown out of their home with no money or prospects. Through hard work, determination, and the help of kind people like Mrs. Florence and Mrs. Abigail, they had not only regained their independence, but thrived beyond their initial expectations. Emily knew there would still be challenges ahead. Olivia would grow up and might want to follow her own path. The property would always need care and improvements, but she would face it all with the confidence of someone who had already overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. That night, after Olivia went to sleep, Emily sat on the porch and gazed at the stars. She thought about Colonel Richard Thornton and wondered how he was doing in his new life in the capital. Surprisingly, she no longer felt anger toward him. What she felt was gratitude. If he hadn't forced them off the ranch, she would never have discovered her own strength and capability. She would never have learned to be independent and self-sufficient. She would never have taught Olivia that dreams can become reality through effort and perseverance. The eviction that had seemed like a tragedy at the time had, in hindsight, revealed itself as the beginning of a transformative journey. Emily smiled at the stars and made a silent promise. She would keep working hard, taking good care of the land and her daughter, and always remember to help others when she had the chance, just as Mrs. Abigail and Mrs. Florence had helped her. 3 years later, when Olivia turned 16, she surprised Emily with an unexpected proposal. "Mom, I want to expand our business," Olivia said. "I think we should start processing our own products." Emily looked at her daughter with curiosity and pride. Olivia had become a young entrepreneur, always thinking of ways to improve and grow. "What kind of processing are you thinking?" Emily asked. "Preserves, jams, sauces," Olivia explained. "We have enough fruits and vegetables, and there's a market for quality handmade products." It was a smart idea. Emily had noticed that artisanal processed goods sold for much better prices at the town market than fresh produce. "We'll need to invest in equipment and learn the techniques," Emily considered. "But it's an excellent idea." Mother and daughter spent the next few months planning the expansion of their business. They researched preservation techniques, studied health regulations, and calculated equipment costs. With the money they had saved, they managed to set up a small industrial kitchen in the annex of their house. Olivia showed a natural talent for creating delicious recipes, while Emily focused on the logistical and financial aspects of the business. The preserves and processed goods business was an immediate success. The superior quality of their products quickly caught the attention not only of market customers, but also of some local restaurants. "Mom, I think we'll need to hire help. Olivia said 6 months after they started production. "We can't keep up with all the demand," Emily agreed. They were working 14-hour days and still had back orders. They hired 2 women from the local community to assist with production. It was rewarding to provide jobs for others in the area, especially since Emily remembered well what it was like to desperately need work. 2 years later, the business had grown so much that they were invited to supply products for a regional supermarket chain. It was a huge opportunity, but also a considerable logistical challenge. "If we accept this contract, we'll need a much larger facility," Emily calculated, "and more employees, more equipment, more of everything. But we'll also have much higher income," Olivia pointed out. "We can use the profits to invest in growth." Emily was proud of her daughter's business acumen. Olivia, now 18, had become an equal partner in the business, contributing both creative ideas and solid financial analysis. They decided to accept the supermarket contract and invest in expansion. They bought land adjacent to their original property and built a small food processing plant. On the day of the factory's inauguration, Emily looked around and could hardly believe what they had built. From a mother and daughter forced out of their home, they had become landowners and successful businesswomen. "Mrs. Abigail should be here to see this," Olivia remarked. Mrs. Abigail had passed away the year before but had lived long enough to see Emily and Olivia thrive. Her last words to Emily had been, "You've proven that dreams are possible. She's watching," Emily said, looking up at the sky. "And she's proud." The factory operated with growing success over the next 2 years. Emily and Olivia employed 15 people from the local community, and their products were sold in over 50 regional stores. Olivia had graduated high school as the top student in her class and received several scholarship offers from prestigious universities. She chose to study business administration, keeping her focus on expanding the family business. "Mum, I have an idea for when I graduate," Olivia said during dinner one evening. "What idea?" Emily asked. "I want our company to become a national leader in artisanal organic products," Olivia explained. "We can expand to other states while always maintaining our values of quality and social responsibility." Emily smiled. Her daughter's ambition knew no bounds, but it was always grounded in strong principles. "And do you think we can do it?" Emily asked. "I'm certain," Olivia replied with conviction. "After all, we've learned that anything is possible when you work hard enough," Emily agreed. The journey they had taken since that traumatic day when they were thrown off the farm had proven there were no impossible dreams, only people who gave up too soon. That evening, Emily walked through the property, which now included not just the original house and garden, but also the factory, administrative offices, and homes for key employees. She stopped at the exact spot where their belongings had been tossed on the day of their eviction. It was hard to believe so much progress had come from a moment of such humiliation and despair. Emily looked at the house where she now lived with Olivia, much larger and more comfortable than the original. She looked at the factory running around the clock, producing high-quality food. She looked at the lush fields growing the raw materials for their thriving business. Most importantly, she thought of the strong, capable woman Olivia had become. The frightened little girl clutching a rag doll on the day of their eviction had grown into a confident young businesswoman, ready to take on the world. Emily smiled and walked back to the house. At the kitchen table, Olivia was studying for her final university exams, surrounded by books on business management and strategic planning. "Did you finish everything you needed to today?" Emily asked. "I did," Olivia replied, closing her books. "And you, how were the meetings with the new clients?" "Very good," Emily said. "I think we'll close deals with at least 3 new chains next month." Mother and daughter talked about their plans for the next day, marketing strategies and growth goals for the coming year. It was a conversation between business partners, but also between a mother and daughter who had overcome every hardship together. As they got ready for bed, Olivia asked a question that surprised Emily. "Mom, do you ever think about what would have happened if Colonel Richard Thornton had never thrown us out?" Emily thought for a moment. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I think our lives would have been much less interesting. I'd probably still be working as a maid, and you might never have discovered your talent for business. It's strange to Be grateful for something bad that happened to us, Olivia said, but I think that day changed our lives for the better. It really did, Emily agreed. It taught us we're stronger than we ever imagined. The next morning, Emily woke early as usual and went to check production at the factory. It was a daily ritual she had kept since the opening, talking with employees and making sure everything ran smoothly. When she returned home for breakfast, she found Olivia already dressed and ready for university. Today's the last day of classes before graduation, Olivia announced. Next week, I'll officially have my degree in business administration. I'm so proud of you, Emily said, hugging her daughter. Your father would be amazed to see the incredible woman you've become. Olivia smiled and grabbed her backpack. When I get back from university today, I want to discuss our 5-year plan, she said. I have some ideas for expanding the company in ways we haven't considered yet. After Olivia left, Emily sat alone in the kitchen, drinking coffee and planning her day. She had supplier meetings, a scheduled quality inspection, and several financial reports to review. It was a busy, sometimes stressful life, but Emily wouldn't trade it for anything. Every challenge she faced now was one she had chosen, not something forced on her by circumstances beyond her control. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was a journalist from a business magazine who wanted to interview Emily about her company's success. We'd like to feature your story in our special edition on women's entrepreneurship, the journalist explained. It's an inspiring story of overcoming challenges and achieving success. Emily agreed to the interview, but asked to include Olivia as a co-interviewee. She insisted that everyone should know the company's success was the result of teamwork between mother and daughter. The interview was scheduled for the following week, right after Olivia's graduation. Emily knew it would be a valuable publicity opportunity for the company, but also a chance to inspire others facing similar hardships to those they had overcome. That afternoon, while reviewing the company's financial reports, Emily paused to calculate exactly how much they had progressed financially since the day they were forced to leave. When they were expelled from the farm, they had $50 and no prospects. Now, 6 years later, the business they had built was worth over $2 million, employed 15 people, and had secured contracts for at least the next 3 years. More impressive than the financial numbers was the personal wealth they had accumulated. They owned the original property, the factory land, modern equipment, a comfortable home, and most importantly, a solid reputation in the business community. Emily smiled as she remembered the day she had calculated it would take tens of thousands of dollars to buy land. Back then, it had seemed like an impossible goal. Now, they owned land worth far more than that and still had enough money to invest in new projects. When Olivia returned from university that afternoon, Emily shared the calculations she had made. Wow, when you lay out the numbers like that, it's really impressive, Olivia said. In 6 years, we went from having nothing to owning a solid, growing business. And most importantly, Emily added, we did it all while staying true to our values. We treated our employees well, produced quality food, and contributed to the local community. Olivia nodded proudly. I think this is exactly how Dad would have wanted us to do it, she said. That evening during dinner, Olivia presented her ideas for the company's next 5 years. She had prepared a detailed presentation with financial projections, market analysis, and growth strategies. My vision is that we can become regional leaders in handmade organic products, Olivia explained. To do that, we need to invest in organic certifications, expand our product line, and develop more efficient distribution channels. Emily listened carefully to every point of the presentation. Olivia had truly learned a lot in university and was applying her knowledge smartly to the family business. These are excellent ideas, Emily said when Olivia finished, but we'll need a lot of capital to implement all of this. I've already researched small business loan options, Olivia replied. With our financial track record and the secured contracts we have, getting financing shouldn't be difficult. Emily was impressed by her daughter's level of preparation. Olivia had anticipated the obvious questions and already had well-founded answers. Let's implement everything gradually, Emily decided. First the organic certifications, then the product line expansion, and finally the broader distribution. The two spent the next few hours discussing technical details and timelines. It was the kind of conversation Emily could never have imagined, having with the frightened girl who had been forced off the farm years earlier. A week later, Olivia graduated from university with academic honors. Emily watched the graduation ceremony with tears of pride in her eyes. Olivia was one of the few students called to receive special recognition for academic excellence. After the ceremony, Emily and Olivia celebrated at an elegant restaurant in town. It was a luxury they could afford now, but still consciously appreciated. "Where do we go from here?" Emily toasted, raising her glass of water. "To the future," Olivia replied, clinking her glass against her mother's. "To new challenges and new victories." Emily smiled. The journey was far from over, but she knew they were ready for whatever lay ahead. The following Monday, Olivia officially took on the role of administrative director of the company, while Emily remained as general director. It was a natural partnership that reflected their complementary strengths. Their first joint project was implementing the organic certification system, a complex process requiring significant changes in production methods, but one that would open far more lucrative markets. "It's going to be intense work for the next 6 months," Olivia warned, "but the long-term benefits justify the effort." Emily agreed. They had learned that sustainable growth always required an initial investment of time and resources. Over the following months, mother and daughter worked tirelessly to align their entire production with organic standards. They hired specialized consultants, retrained employees, and invested in new equipment. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The process was challenging, but also educational. Emily discovered aspects of sustainable agriculture she hadn't known before, while Olivia applied her administrative expertise to organize the certification process efficiently. 6 months later, they received their official organic certification, a major milestone that immediately opened new business opportunities. "We have 3 new contract proposals that were just waiting for certification," Olivia announced at the team meeting, celebrating their achievement. Their first interview for the business magazine was also published that week. The article highlighted Emily and Olivia's story of resilience and the impressive growth of their company. "Business women transform adversity into success," was the headline. Mother and daughter build business empire after being forced out of their home. The publication brought national attention to their company. Emily received invitations to speak at women's entrepreneurship events, and Olivia was asked to join panels about young entrepreneurs. "I never imagined our story would interest so many people," Emily remarked after receiving her 10th speaking invitation that week. "It's because our story shows that it's possible to overcome any adversity," Olivia replied, "and that inspires people facing their own challenges." Emily decided to accept some of the speaking invitations. She saw it as an opportunity to give back to society by sharing the lessons she had learned on her journey. Her first talk was at an event for women entrepreneurs in the state capital. Emily was nervous. She had never spoken to such a large audience before, but she knew she had a valuable story to share. "The secret isn't avoiding adversity," Emily said during her speech. "The secret is learning to turn it into an opportunity for growth." The audience responded enthusiastically, and afterward many women approached her to share their own stories of overcoming hardships. Emily realized she had found a new mission to inspire others through her experience. In the following months, Emily and Olivia balanced managing their growing business with speaking engagements and mentorship. They created an informal support program for women entrepreneurs in the region, offering free consulting and interest-free loans for small businesses. "Remember how Mrs. Abigail helped us when we needed it most," Emily said to Olivia. "Now it's our turn to help others." The entrepreneur support program was a success. Within a year, they had helped 15 women start their own businesses in the area. Some became suppliers for Emily and Olivia's company, creating a network of business cooperation. 2 years after Olivia's graduation, their company had become the regional leader in handmade organic products. They employed 40 people, operated in 5 states, and had a waiting list of clients wanting contracts. "I think it's time to consider national expansion," Olivia suggested during a strategic planning meeting. Emily considered the proposal. National expansion would mean much more complexity and risk, but also unprecedented opportunities. "Let's study the feasibility," Emily decided. "But no rush. Sustainable growth has always been our priority." The two spent the next few months researching national markets, analyzing competitors, and developing strategies for entering new territories. It was an ambitious project that would require significant investment. During this planning period, Emily received an unexpected call. It was an investigative reporter writing a story about Colonel Richard Thornton. "I heard you were his tenants before becoming successful businesswomen," the reporter said. "I'd like to include your perspective in the piece." Emily was curious about the reason for the investigation, but decided to cooperate. She and Olivia had built their reputation on honesty and transparency. "What exactly do you want to know?" Emily asked. "We're investigating allegations that Colonel Richard Thornton engaged in abusive practices with his tenants," the reporter explained. "Several people have reported situations similar to what you experienced." Emily wasn't surprised. She had always suspected other families had suffered similar treatment to what they had endured. The interview with the reporter brought back memories Emily had preferred to forget, but it also reinforced her gratitude for the journey they had taken since then. "I don't hold a grudge against Colonel Richard Thornton," Emily told the reporter. "What he did to us was wrong, but it ended up being the start of an extraordinary journey of growth and fulfillment." When the article was published, it brought even more attention to Emily and Olivia's story. They received hundreds of supportive messages and several new business opportunities. One message was particularly touching. It was from a young single mother who had been evicted from her apartment and was struggling to rebuild her life with her young daughter. "Your story gave me hope," the woman wrote. "If you could overcome all that, I can too." Emily personally responded to the message and offered guidance and support. It was exactly the kind of situation where she wanted to make a difference. 3 years after Olivia's graduation, their company had become a national benchmark for handmade organic products. They operated factories in 3 states, employed over 200 people, and had contracts with the country's largest supermarket chains. More important than financial success, Emily and Olivia had built a corporate culture based on strong values. They offered above-market wages, comprehensive benefits, and professional growth opportunities for all employees. "Our company is proof that financial success can be achieved while maintaining ethical principles," said Olivia during an interview for a national business magazine. Emily was proud to see how Olivia had upheld their family values, even while navigating the complex world of big business. One afternoon, while reviewing financial reports, Emily paused to reflect on the extraordinary journey they had taken. In 10 years, they had gone from complete vulnerability to becoming nationally respected business leaders. More important than material success, they had proven to themselves that there are no limits to what a person can achieve with determination, hard work, and strong principles. Emily looked out her office window and saw Olivia talking to a group of employees in the factory yard. At 25, Olivia had become a natural leader, respected for both her technical competence and personal integrity. That evening at dinner, Emily asked a question that had been on her mind for a while. "Olivia, have you ever thought about having children?" she asked. Olivia smiled. "I've been thinking about it," she admitted, "especially after seeing how you raised and inspired me. I'd love to pass on the lessons I've learned." "What about marriage?" Emily continued, curious. "I've thought about that too," Olivia replied. "I met someone in college who shares my values and ambitions. We're still getting to know each other, but it's promising." Emily was happy to hear Olivia considering these possibilities. Despite all their professional success, she wanted her daughter to experience the joy of having her own family. "Whatever choices you make," Emily said, "I'll support and celebrate with you." Olivia stood up and hugged her mother. "I know," she said, "and when the time comes, I want my children to have you as their grandmother. You have so much love and wisdom to share." That conversation marked a new phase in Emily and Olivia's relationship. They were no longer just mother and daughter struggling to survive, nor just business partners building an empire. Now they were two grown women planning their family's future and considering the legacy they wanted to leave. 2 years later, Olivia married Michael, an environmental engineer she had met in college. The ceremony took place on their original property, the exact spot where Emily and Olivia had been forced out 12 years earlier. "It's symbolic," Olivia said while planning the wedding. "We're celebrating love and the future in the place where our transformative journey began." Emily carefully organized every detail of the ceremony. Mrs. Florence, now older but still full of energy, came to help with the preparations. Many of the company's employees and all the women who had been helped through their entrepreneurship program were also invited. During the ceremony, Emily looked around in awe at the complete transformation of the place. Where there had once been humiliation and despair, there was now joy, prosperity, and celebration. In her speech at the reception, Olivia spoke about the journey she and her mother had taken together. "My mother taught me that no matter how difficult the situation," Olivia said, looking at Emily with emotion, "it's always possible to build something better if you're willing to work for it." Emily cried with emotion and pride. Seeing Olivia blossom into a fulfilled woman, both professionally and personally, was the greatest reward she could imagine. 18 months after the wedding, Olivia announced she was pregnant. Emily was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a grandmother. "I hope I'm as good a grandmother as you were a mother," Emily said, hugging Olivia. "You'll be an amazing grandmother," Olivia assured her. "And our child will grow up hearing stories about how Grandma turned adversity into victory." During Olivia's pregnancy, Emily dedicated herself to preparing everything for the arrival of her grandchild. She renovated one of the rooms in the house, turning it into a cozy nursery, and began sewing little clothes and blankets with her own hands. Michael adapted well to both the family and business dynamics. As an environmental engineer, he brought valuable knowledge about sustainability that helped the company implement even more eco-friendly practices. "We could make our production completely carbon neutral," Michael suggested during a meeting. "Not only is it good for the environment, but it's also a key competitive advantage." Emily immediately approved the proposal. Sustainability had always been a priority, and now they had the technical expertise to take it to the next level. When Olivia was 7 months pregnant, the company received a national recognition as Company of the Year in Sustainability and Social Responsibility. It was an honor that validated all the principles Emily and Olivia had worked for. "This award represents more than just business success," Emily said during the ceremony. "It proves that it's possible to build thriving businesses without compromising our values or our planet." The ceremony was broadcast nationwide, and Emily and Olivia's story inspired thousands of viewers. Emily received hundreds of messages from women who resonated with her journey. One message in particular touched her deeply. It was from a young mother who had been evicted with 3 small children and managed to start a homemade sweets business after watching one of Emily's talks. "Your story gave me the courage not to give up," the woman wrote. "Today I have my own shop and am supporting my family with dignity. Thank you for showing me it's possible." Emily always responded personally to these messages. She understood the importance of knowing someone believed in your potential when everything seemed lost. The following month, Olivia gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Hope. Emily held her granddaughter for the first time and felt an indescribable emotion. "She'll grow up in a world very different from the one we knew," Emily said, gazing at the baby's face. "A world where she'll learn early on that she can achieve anything." Olivia watched her mother with her daughter and smiled through tears of joy. "Mom, you've accomplished so much more than just surviving," Olivia said. "You've created a legacy of strength, determination, and compassion that will pass from generation to generation." In the first months of Hope's life, Emily divided her time between the company and caring for her granddaughter. It was a new source of joy she hadn't anticipated. "Grandma Emily is a natural," Michael joked, watching Emily hum to the baby. "Hope already prefers her arms to ours." Emily laughed. Being a grandmother was even more rewarding than she'd imagined. It was like getting a second chance at motherhood, but now with the wisdom and stability she hadn't had when Olivia was a baby. As Hope grew, Emily began planning how she'd pass on life lessons to her granddaughter. She wanted Hope to know the family's story, but in a way that was inspiring, not traumatizing. When she's old enough, Emily planned, I'll show her exactly where our journey began. I'll explain that sometimes the hardest moments in life are just the start of something wonderful. Olivia completely agreed. I want her to understand that it doesn't matter where you come from or what obstacles you face, Olivia said. What matters is your determination to build something better. 2 years after Hope's birth, the company had expanded to operate in all states across the United States. Emily, now 45, decided it was time to begin preparing for a gradual leadership transition. Olivia, I think it's time for you to take over as president of the company, Emily announced during a family meeting. You have all the qualifications and the vision needed to take the company to the next level. Olivia was surprised and moved by the proposal. Mom, I'm sure I can take on more responsibilities, she said, but I don't want you to step away completely. Your experience and wisdom are irreplaceable. Emily smiled. She had raised Olivia to be independent and confident, but it was heartwarming to know her daughter still valued her guidance. I won't step away, Emily assured her. I'll become chairwoman of the board and focus more on mentoring and social responsibility, but the operational decisions will be yours. The transition was implemented gradually over 6 months. Olivia confidently took on the responsibilities of CEO, while Emily focused on expanding the program, supporting women entrepreneurs, and writing a book about her journey. The book, titled From Adversity to Triumph, A Mother-Daughter Journey, became a national bestseller. Emily used the book's royalties to create a foundation that provided microloans and mentorship for women in vulnerable situations. The money we earn from our stories should go back to helping others who are living through difficult chapters in their own journeys, Emily explained during the foundation's launch. The foundation quickly became a national model for women's empowerment. In its first year, it helped over 500 women start their own businesses and trained 200 volunteers to serve as mentors. Olivia continued leading the company with excellence, implementing technological innovations and expanding into international markets. Under her leadership, the company became the first in its sector in the United States to receive international fair trade certification. We're proving that American companies can compete globally while maintaining the highest ethical standards, Olivia said during an international conference on business sustainability. Emily watched her daughter's successes with immense pride. Olivia had not only continued the legacy they had built together, but was expanding it in ways Emily had never imagined. When Hope turned 3, Emily decided it was time to share the family story with her granddaughter in an age-appropriate way. Hope, did you know Grandma and Mommy used to live in a tiny little house right here on this land? Emily began, holding her granddaughter in her lap. You lived here? Hope asked, looking around the expansive property. Yes, right where the rose garden is now, Emily said, pointing. And do you know what happened? One day Grandma and Mommy had to leave because we didn't have enough money to stay. Where did you go? Hope asked, fascinated. We went to the city and worked really hard to earn money so we could come back, Emily continued. Mommy helped me by planting vegetables and being very smart, and then we managed to buy all this land and build our company. Hope listened carefully, absorbing every word. Grandma, were you sad when you had to leave? The little girl asked. We were very sad, Emily admitted. But we learned that sometimes the sad things that happen can turn into something wonderful if you don't give up. How did you know you shouldn't give up? Hope continued, showing impressive insight for her age. Emily thought carefully about her answer. Because Grandma knew she had a special daughter to take care of, said Emily, stroking Hope's hair. And when you love someone deeply, you find the strength to overcome anything. That conversation marked the beginning of many others in which Emily gradually shared the family story with Hope. The girl showed remarkable emotional maturity and asked questions that sometimes surprised Emily with their depth. Grandma, if the bad man hadn't sent you away, would I even exist? Hope asked one day. Emily was taken aback by the question. You know, Hope, maybe you would have existed in a different way, Emily replied. But you are exactly who you are because our whole journey happened the way it did. So the bad man accidentally did something good? Hope concluded. Emily smiled at her granddaughter's logic. That's an interesting way to look at it, she agreed. Sometimes the bad things that happen to us lead us to even better places than we would have been. As Hope grew, she showed interest in both farming and business. Emily and Olivia included her in age-appropriate activities, letting her learn about responsibility and teamwork. Hope has a natural talent for leadership, observed Michael, watching his daughter organize the other children during playtime. She got that from her mother and grandmother. By age 5, Hope already knew how to count money, understood basics, planting and harvesting concepts, and showed exceptional empathy for people going through hardships. "Grandma, why was that lady at the market crying?" Hope asked after seeing Emily help a vendor struggling financially. "She's going through a tough time, just like Grandma and Mommy did a long time ago," Emily explained. "That's why we always help when we can." "When I grow up, can I help people too?" Hope asked. "Of course you can," Emily replied. "In fact, you already are just by being a kind and caring girl." Hope smiled and hugged her grandmother. "Grandma, you're the coolest person in the world," she declared. Emily's heart swelled with love. Having Hope in her life had added a whole new dimension to her happiness. That year, the company celebrated 15 years since its founding. To mark the occasion, Emily and Olivia threw a big party for all the employees, their families, and business partners. During the celebration, Emily gave an emotional speech about the company's journey. 15 years ago, Olivia and I had just a dream and a lot of determination, Emily told the gathered crowd. Today, we employ over 500 people, operate in 2 countries, and positively impact thousands of lives. The audience applauded warmly. Many of the employees had grown professionally alongside the company and considered themselves part of a big family. "But what makes me proudest," Emily continued, "isn't the financial numbers or the awards we've won. It's knowing we've built all this while staying true to our values of integrity, sustainability, and social responsibility." Olivia, who was holding Hope in her arms, felt tears of emotion in her eyes. She thought about the extraordinary journey she had shared with her mother and felt grateful for every challenge and every victory. After the party, Emily, Olivia, and Hope walked to the site where the original house had stood. It was now a memorial garden with a plaque, briefly telling the family's story. "Hope, do you want to know a secret?" Emily said, kneeling beside her granddaughter. "What secret, Grandma?" Hope asked, curious. "This place isn't just where our story began," Emily said. "It's also where your story is starting. One day, you'll have your own adventures and challenges, and you'll discover you're even stronger than you imagine." Hope nodded solemnly, as if understanding the importance of the moment. "Grandma, when I grow up, can I work at the company with you and Mom?" the little girl asked. "If that's what you want to do," Emily replied. "But the most important thing is that you choose a path that makes your heart happy, just like Grandma and Mom did." "My heart is happy when I help people," said Hope, "just like you do." Emily hugged her granddaughter tightly. It was clear Hope was growing up with the same values of compassion and determination that had guided Emily and Olivia. In the years that followed, Emily divided her time between the foundation, mentoring young entrepreneurs, and the joy of being a grandmother. Olivia continued expanding the company, now internationally recognized as a model of sustainable and socially responsible business. When Hope turned 7, Emily decided to teach her granddaughter a practical lesson about perseverance and hard work. "Hope, how about the 2 of us plant our own special garden?" Emily suggested. "Our own garden," Hope exclaimed excitedly. "Can we plant strawberries?" "We can plant strawberries, but other things too," Emily said, "and I'll teach you everything about caring for plants from the beginning." Emily and Hope dedicated their weekend afternoons to the small garden. Emily taught her granddaughter about preparing the soil, planting seeds, watering just the right amount, and having patience to wait for results. "Grandma, why do plants take so long to grow?" Hope asked after 2 weeks of waiting for the first sprouts. "Because the best things in life need time to develop," Emily explained. "Just like our company and our family. We grew slowly, but we grew strong." Hope accepted the explanation and kept tending to the plants with dedication. When the first sprouts finally appeared, she shouted with joy and ran to call Olivia and Michael. "Mom, Dad, come see, the little plants sprouted," Hope exclaimed. Olivia and Michael came running and celebrated with Hope as if it were the greatest achievement in the world. Emily watched the scene and remembered when Olivia was the same age and showed the same enthusiasm for plants. "The tradition continues," Emily murmured to herself, smiling. As Hope's garden grew and produced its first fruits, the girl learned valuable lessons about responsibility, patience, and the value of hard work. Emily seized every moment to share life wisdom through practical activities. "Grandma, can I sell some strawberries at the market?" Hope asked when her plant produced more fruit than the family could eat. "Of course you can," Emily replied. "But first, let's calculate how much it costs to plant and care for the strawberries, so you can learn about profit and loss." Emily taught Hope to do simple cost and revenue calculations. The girl was fascinated to discover she had made $12 from her small harvest. "Grandma, if I plant more strawberries, will I earn more money?" Hope asked, already thinking about expanding her business. "Probably," Emily answered, "but it'll also mean more work. You'll need to decide if you're willing to work harder to earn more." Hope thought seriously about it and decided to expand her garden. Emily watched with pride as her granddaughter applied the same principles of gradual and responsible growth she herself had used to build the company. When Hope turned 8, the family decided to throw a big celebration. It was also the year the company would mark 2 decades of operation. During Hope's birthday party, Emily made an announcement that surprised everyone. "I've decided to create a special educational fund for Hope," said Emily. "It's money she can only use for education, but she can choose any field of study that sparks her interest." Hope was curious about what an educational fund meant, but Olivia and Michael understood the importance of the gesture right away. "Mom, that's incredibly generous," said Olivia. "But you didn't have to—" "I did," Emily interrupted. "Education is the one thing no one can ever take away from a person. I want to make sure Hope has every opportunity I never had." Hope walked up to her grandmother and asked, "Grandma, what's education?" "Education is learning new things that make you smarter and more capable," Emily explained. "Like when you learn to tend the garden, but in a special school where they teach all kinds of different things." "Can I learn about plants and business?" Hope asked. "You can learn about anything you want," Emily assured her. "The whole world will be within your reach." That night, after Hope had fallen asleep, Emily, Olivia, and Michael talked about the little girl's future. "She shows so much potential," Michael observed. "She's smart like her mother, determined like her grandmother, but she also has a special kindness toward others." "I think she'll choose a career that lets her help people," Olivia said. "It comes naturally to her." Emily agreed. "Whatever path she chooses, we'll support her completely," she promised. "What matters is that she knows she has a solid foundation and a family who believes in her." The following year, Emily decided to formally document the family's history for future generations. She worked with a professional writer to create a detailed book about their journey, from being forced off the farm to their current business success. "I want Hope and her future children to have access to the whole story," Emily explained. "Not just a simplified version, but every detail about the challenges we faced and how we overcame them." The book included old photographs, original documents, and interviews with people who had been important in Emily and Olivia's journey. Mrs. Florence, now in her 80s but still sharp, shared her memories of Emily and Olivia's first months in the city. "Emily came to my house a broken woman," Mrs. Florence told the writer, "but I saw an inner strength in her that I knew would take her far. And Olivia was a special child, wise beyond her years, but never losing her sweetness." Mrs. Abigail had passed away a few years earlier, but her children provided letters and documents she had kept about her friendship with Emily. Discovering these letters moved Emily deeply. In one, Mrs. Abigail had written, "Emily taught me that age is no excuse to stop dreaming. Watching her rebuild her life at 35 inspired me to sell my land and help her. It was the best investment I ever made, not financially, but in humanity." When the book was finished, Emily organized a special launch gathering for family and close friends. Hope, now 9, sat beside her grandmother as Emily read excerpts from the story. "This book is for you, Hope," Emily said, handing the first copy to her granddaughter. "So you'll always remember where you came from and know you can go anywhere." Hope held the book with reverence, running her fingers over the cover, which showed a photo of Emily and Olivia in their early days at the boarding house. "Grandma, can I read it by myself?" Hope asked. "Of course," Emily replied, "but if you have any questions or want to talk about any part, I'll always be here." Hope started reading the book that very night. Though some parts were hard for her age, she persisted and asked Emily many questions about details of the story. "Grandma, were you scared when you got kicked out of the house?" Hope asked one evening. "I was very scared," Emily admitted. "Afraid I wouldn't be able to take care of your mum, afraid we wouldn't have food or a place to sleep, afraid I'd fail." "But you didn't fail," Hope pointed out. "No," Emily agreed, "but I didn't know that then. Sometimes you have to be brave even when you're scared." "How do you know if you're being brave or just silly?" Hope asked, showing surprising wisdom. Emily thought carefully about the question. "I think you're being brave when you do the right thing even though you're scared," she answered. "And you're being silly when you do dangerous things, just to impress others." Hope nodded as if the answer made perfect sense to her. At 10 years old, Hope had already read the family book 3 times and knew every detail of the story. She began joining Emily for some foundation activities, watching how her grandmother mentored other women. "Grandma, why was that lady crying when you talked to her?" Hope asked after a mentoring session. "Because she's going through hardships like the ones we faced," Emily explained. "Sometimes people cry with relief when they realize they're not alone." "And can you help her? Like Mrs. Abigail helped us?" Hope continued. "I'm trying," Emily replied. "But everyone has to find their own strength. I can show the way, but they have to walk it." Hope absorbed these lessons about leadership and empathy with natural ease. Emily noticed her granddaughter was developing the same qualities that had allowed her and Olivia to overcome their struggles. That year, Olivia announced she was pregnant again. Emily was emotional at the prospect of another grandchild. "Hope, you're going to have a little brother or sister," Olivia announced during dinner. Hope beamed with joy. "Can I teach them everything I've learned about plants?" she asked. "Of course," Olivia replied. "You'll be a wonderful big sister." Emily watched Hope's reaction and remembered how she herself had felt responsible for Olivia when it was just the 2 of them against the world. But this time was different. Hope was growing up in an environment of safety and love, not adversity and uncertainty. When the second grandchild was born, a boy named Nathan, Emily felt that indescribable joy of holding a family baby in her arms once more. "He'll grow up hearing the same stories as Hope," Emily said, looking at the baby's face. "But he'll grow up knowing he belongs to a family of winners." Hope took her role as big sister seriously and with affection. She helped care for Nathan and always told him adapted versions of the family story. "Nathan, did you know Grandma Emily is a warrior?" Hope would say to her baby brother. "She fought a bad man and won, and that's why we have this beautiful home and this special family." Emily overheard these conversations and smiled. Hope was naturally stepping into the role of passing down the family story to the next generation. As Nathan grew, Hope became his unofficial teacher, showing him about plants, animals, and family values. Emily watched the interactions between her grandchildren and saw echoes of her own relationship with Olivia. "Hope has a real gift for teaching," Michael observed. "She's patient and kind, but firm when she needs to be. She's learning leadership through responsibility," Emily said. "That's how true leaders are made." When Hope turned 12, Emily decided it was time for a more mature conversation about the future. "Hope, have you thought about what you want to do when you grow up?" Emily asked during a walk around the property. "I want to help people like you and Mom do," Hope answered without hesitation. "But I don't know exactly how yet." "You don't need to know yet," Emily reassured her. "But it's good to start paying attention to what interests you most." "I like plants, I like business, and I like helping people who are sad," Hope said, making a mental list. "Is there a job that combines all of that?" Emily smiled at her granddaughter's insight. "There are many jobs that combine those things," she said. "You could be a social entrepreneur, work in sustainable development, or even create your own kind of job that doesn't exist yet." "I can create my own kind of job?" Hope asked, fascinated. "Of course you can," Emily assured her. "That's what your mum and I did. We built a company that worked the way we believed was right." Hope grew thoughtful for a few minutes. "Grandma, if I create my own job, can you help me like you helped Mom?" she finally asked. "I'll help you with everything I can," Emily promised. "But I hope when your time comes, you won't have to go through the hardships we did." "But what if the hardships make me stronger, like they made you?" Hope questioned. Emily stopped walking and looked at her granddaughter with surprise and admiration. "Hope, you're very wise for your 12 years," Emily said, "but I'd rather you be strong by choice, not by necessity." In that conversation, Emily realized Hope had absorbed the deepest lessons of the family's story. The girl understood that strength and resilience were valuable qualities, but suffering wasn't necessary to develop them. The following year, Olivia proposed an idea that excited the whole family. "What if we created an educational program where Hope and other kids could learn about entrepreneurship and social responsibility?" she suggested. "How would it work?" Emily asked, intrigued. "During the summer, the kids would come here to the property and learn about farming, basic management and social projects," Olivia explained. "It would be like an educational camp." Hope was thrilled by the idea. "Can I help teach the other kids?" she asked. "Of course you can," Olivia replied. "You'd be one of the junior mentors." The program launched the following summer. 20 children between 8 and 14 participated in the first session. Hope stood out as a natural leader, helping the younger kids and organizing activities. Emily watched Hope interact with the others and saw in her the same empathetic leadership qualities Olivia had shown from a young age. "She was born to lead," Michael remarked, watching Hope resolve a conflict between two children with diplomacy and fairness. "But to lead with the heart, not just the mind," Emily observed. "That's how you build something lasting." The program was such a success that the following year, they received applications from children across the state. Emily and Olivia decided to expand it and create a non-profit dedicated to youth entrepreneurial education. "We'll raise the next generation of conscious leaders," Emily said during the non-profit's official launch. "Children who grow up knowing success and social responsibility go hand in hand." Hope, now 14, took on an official role as the non-profit's junior coordinator. She developed her own teaching methods that blended fun with hands-on learning. "Grandma, I think I found my calling," Hope said to Emily after a particularly successful session with a group of children. "What's your calling?" Emily asked. "I want to train leaders who will change the world for the better," Hope answered with conviction. "Just like you did with me and Mom." Emily felt a deep emotion hearing those words. Hope hadn't just absorbed the family's lessons. She was developing her own vision for how to apply them in the world. That year, the company celebrated 25 years of operation. It was a significant milestone, marked with a grand celebration for employees, partners, and the community. During the event, Emily was honored as Entrepreneur of the Century by a national business association. It was recognition that validated not only her business success, but also her social impact. "This award isn't just mine," Emily said during her acceptance speech. "It belongs to every woman who's ever been underestimated and proved she was capable of far more than anyone imagined." The audience rose to their feet in applause. Among the attendees were many of the women Emily had mentored over the years, including some who now ran their own successful businesses. Hope watched the ceremony with visible pride. At 14, she fully understood the magnitude of her grandmother's and mother's achievements. "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to be just like you," Hope said after the ceremony. "No," Emily replied, surprising her granddaughter. "When you grow up, I want you to be yourself, only even better. We pave the way so the next generation can go further." Hope thought about the answer and nodded in understanding. "Then I'll be the best version of myself," she promised. "That's exactly right," Emily agreed, hugging her. 2 years later, when Hope turned 16, she surprised the family with an announcement during her birthday dinner. "I've decided what I want to study in college," she said. What do you want to study? Olivia asked, curious. Psychology and business administration, Hope answered. I want to understand how to help people discover their potential and how to create organizations that make a difference in the world. Emily was impressed by the choice. It was a perfect combination for someone who wanted to follow the path of empathetic leadership. That's an excellent choice, Emily said. It'll give you the tools to do exactly what you want to do. And I've already started preparing, Hope continued. I want to study abroad before college to learn about different cultures and ways to solve problems. Olivia and Michael were proud of their daughter's maturity and planning. Where do you want to study abroad? Michael asked. Several places, Hope replied. I want to learn about social programs in Sweden, cooperatives in Spain, and sustainability projects in Costa Rica. Emily smiled. Hope was thinking globally, but keeping her feet on the ground, exactly as she'd been taught. The following year, Hope traveled to Europe for her exchange program. She kept in regular contact with her family, sharing her discoveries and experiences. Grandma, did you know Sweden has government programs that do exactly what our foundation does? Hope wrote in one of her letters. But on a much larger and more organized scale. Emily read Hope's letters with fascination. Her granddaughter was absorbing knowledge from different cultures and already thinking about how to apply it in the United States. When Hope returned, from her exchange, she was even more determined and full of new ideas. Grandma, I want to expand our NGO to work with young people across the country, Hope said soon after coming back, and I want to partner with universities to develop research on youth leadership. Emily was impressed by her granddaughter's expanded vision. These are ambitious ideas, Emily said, but if anyone can make them happen, it's you. Hope spent the following months developing a detailed plan for the NGO's expansion. She applied everything she had learned during her exchange and consulted experts in education and social development. When she presented the plan to Emily and Olivia, it was clear that Hope had inherited not only the family's values, but also their strategic thinking and long-term vision. This plan is remarkable, Olivia said after reviewing the proposal. You've thought through every detail and anticipated potential obstacles. I learned from the best, Hope replied, smiling at her mother and grandmother. Emily felt deep satisfaction seeing how Hope was preparing to take the lead on her own projects. Her granddaughter had absorbed all the lessons about careful planning and sustainable growth. That year, Nathan, now 7, began showing his own talents and interests. Unlike Hope, who was drawn to leadership and social projects, Nathan was fascinated by technology and innovation. Grandma, can I make an app to help people plant better? Nathan asked one day. Emily was surprised by the question. Do you know how to make apps? She asked. Not yet, Nathan admitted. But I can learn. My teacher said programming is like learning a new language. Emily smiled. Nathan was showing the same determination that defined their family, but applied to entirely new areas. If you want to learn, we'll find a way for you to learn, she promised. Nathan began studying basic programming on weekends. Hope helped him with more complex concepts, and soon the siblings were collaborating on small tech projects. They work well together, Olivia observed, watching her children create a simple game about sustainable farming. Each has their own unique talents, but they share the same values, Emily said. It's a powerful combination. As Hope neared college age, Emily began reflecting on her own legacy and the family's future. At 55, Emily had accomplished far more than she ever imagined possible. She had built a thriving business, positively impacted thousands of lives through the foundation, and raised a strong, close-knit family. Most importantly, she had proven to herself and the world that there are no limits to what someone can achieve with determination, hard work, and strong principles. Olivia, I've been thinking about writing another book, Emily said one evening. About what? Olivia asked. About how to build legacies that last for generations, Emily replied. I want to share everything I've learned about shaping leaders and creating lasting impact. Olivia was excited by the idea. It would be a valuable book, she agreed. You have a unique perspective on transformational leadership. Emily spent the following months working on the new book. She interviewed business leaders, educators, and social activists to understand how different people built meaningful legacies. The book, titled Transformative Legacies, Building Impact Beyond Our Own Lives, became another bestseller and cemented Emily as one of the nation's leading voices on conscious leadership. During the book launch, Emily made a statement that surprised the audience. "This will likely be the last book I write about my own journey," she said. "From now on, I want to focus on helping others write their own stories of transformation." It was a natural transition for Emily. She had shared her story, inspired thousands of people, and created organizations that would continue her work even without her direct involvement. Now it was time to focus on shaping the next generation of leaders, especially Hope and Nathan, so they could take the family legacy even further. When Hope graduated from high school as the top student in her class, Emily felt a powerful déjà vu. It was like watching Olivia graduate all over again, but under completely different circumstances. "Grandma, thank you for everything you've taught me," Hope said during the graduation party. "I promise to use everything I've learned to make a difference in the world." "You're already making a difference," Emily replied. "And I can't wait to see how far you'll go." Hope had been accepted into 3 prestigious universities with full scholarships. She chose one that offered an innovative program combining psychology, business administration, and social development. "It's exactly what I need to achieve my goals," Hope explained to the family. At the last dinner before Hope left for college, Emily made a special toast. "To Hope," Emily said, raising her glass. "May you always remember that you carry within you the strength of generations of women who never gave up." "To Grandma Emily," Hope replied, raising her glass as well. "Who taught me that dreams don't expire, and it's never too late to start over." The family toasted with emotion. It was the end of one era and the beginning of another. After Hope left for college, Emily focused on working with Nathan and continuing to expand the foundation. Nathan, now 10 years old, had developed impressive programming skills and was creating digital tools to support the family's social projects. "Grandma, can I make a new website for the foundation that's easier for people to use now?" he proposed. "Of course you can," Emily replied. "Show me your ideas." Nathan presented a detailed plan for an interactive website that would allow women supported by the foundation to access educational resources, connect with mentors, and track their entrepreneurial progress. "Nathan, this is brilliant," Emily said, impressed. "You've thought of things that never even crossed our minds." Nathan smiled proudly. "I learned from you that technology only matters when it helps real people," he said. Emily hugged her grandson, proud to see how he was applying the family's values to his technological innovations. During Hope's college years, she stayed closely connected with the family and returned home during breaks with new ideas and projects. Each semester, she brought back knowledge that she immediately applied to the family's work. "Grandma, I learned about a new methodology for measuring social impact," Hope said during one of her visits. "We can implement it in the foundation to better showcase our results." Emily admired how Hope could blend academic theory with practical application. Her granddaughter was becoming an even more effective leader than Emily had imagined. In Hope's final year of college, Emily made an important decision. "Olivia, I think it's time we start planning my retirement," Emily said during a family meeting. Olivia was surprised but understood. "Do you want to retire completely or just scale back your activities?" she asked. "I want to focus solely on mentoring and spending time with family," Emily replied. "The business is well established. The foundation has a capable team, and Hope will soon be ready to take on new challenges." It was a carefully planned transition. Emily had spent the last years preparing competent successors in all her professional endeavors. When Hope graduated from university with highest honors, she returned home with an ambitious proposal. "I want to create a youth leadership institute," announced Hope during her graduation celebration dinner, "a place where young people from across the country can come to learn about social entrepreneurship and conscious leadership." Emily was moved by the proposal. It was exactly the kind of project that represented the natural evolution of the work their family had begun. "Where do you want to build this institute?" Emily asked. "Right here," Hope replied, gesturing to the surrounding property. "In this place where it all began, I want young leaders to come learn our story and feel inspired to create their own stories of transformation. Olivia and Michael enthusiastically supported the idea. Nathan, now 15, and already a talented programmer, volunteered to develop the Institute's entire technological infrastructure. "Let's make this place a hub of transformation for the whole country," Nathan said, already envisioning the tech possibilities. Emily looked around the table at her family and felt deep gratitude. Each person there represented a generation of the journey that had started with so much pain and uncertainty 25 years earlier. "We'll build this institute together," Emily declared. "It will be the final project of my active career and the first major project of Hope's career." The next 2 years were dedicated to creating the Transformational Leadership Institute. Emily used her connections and resources to secure financial and institutional support. Olivia contributed management and operations expertise. Michael provided insights on sustainability and environmental impact. Nathan developed all the technological solutions, and Hope designed the curriculum and educational methodology. "It's as if our entire journey has led to this moment," Emily remarked as she oversaw the construction of the Institute's main building. The Institute opened in an emotional ceremony attended by hundreds, business leaders, educators, young, visionaries, and many of the women Emily had mentored over the years. During the event, Emily gave her final public speech as an active leader. 25 years ago, my daughter and I were forced out of a small house on this very property," Emily said, her voice echoing through the packed auditorium. "Today we open an institute here that will train leaders to transform the United States." The audience was moved by the powerful contrast in her story. "If our journey proves anything," Emily continued, "it's that no matter how difficult your beginning, what matters is your determination to create a different ending." Hope officially assumed leadership of the Institute on opening day. Emily watched her granddaughter guide the first orientation session for young participants and felt complete satisfaction. "Now it's your turn," Emily told Hope after the ceremony. "It's not just mine," Hope replied. "It's our entire generation's, but built on the foundation you created." Emily smiled. Hope understood perfectly that leadership is about building platforms for others to shine, not holding control forever. In the following months, Emily settled into a quieter routine. She still offered individual mentorship to some businesswomen, but spent most of her time with family and caring for herself. Nathan stood out as the region's most promising young technologist, receiving invitations to national programming competitions. He remained focused on developing solutions with positive social impact. "Grandma, I created an algorithm that can help small farmers optimize their crops," Nathan said, showing off his latest project. Emily was impressed by the technical sophistication of her grandson's work, but especially by its practical application. "You're carrying on the family tradition of using your talents to help others," Emily said proudly. Hope's Institute quickly became a national benchmark in youth leadership education. Young people from across the country applied to its programs, and many graduates were already launching their own social impact projects. "In just 2 years, we have alumni leading initiatives in 15 different states," Hope reported to Emily during dinner. Emily took pride in the results, but especially in the methodology Hope had developed. Her granddaughter had managed to systematize and scale the principles Emily had used intuitively throughout her own journey. As she approached her 60s, Emily began reflecting on the full legacy she had created. It was far more than a thriving business or a successful foundation. She had proven that adversity can be transformed into strength, that true leadership comes from serving others, and that the greatest success lies in raising people capable of surpassing your own achievements. Most importantly, she had built a family that understood these principles and was committed to carrying them forward. On the company's 30th anniversary, Emily was honored as Business Legend of the Year. During the ceremony, she had the chance to look back and assess her entire journey. "When I reflect on the last 30 years," Emily said in her speech, "I don't just see a story of business success. I see proof that every difficult ending can be the start of something extraordinary." The audience gave her a standing ovation. Among the attendees were hundreds whose lives had been touched by Emily's work and her family's efforts. After the ceremony, Emily walked once more to the place where it had all begun. It was now a well-maintained memorial garden, but she could still vividly remember that devastating day when she and Olivia had been cast out. Hope and Nathan joined her in the garden. "Grandma, are you sad?" Nathan asked, noticing Emily's thoughtful expression. "No, sweetheart," Emily replied. "I'm grateful, deeply grateful for everything that happened, even the hard parts." "Why grateful for the hard parts?" Hope asked. Emily considered the question for a moment. "Because the hard parts taught me I'm stronger than I ever imagined," she said. "And they gave me the chance to prove that to myself, and to you, and to thousands of others," Nathan added. Emily smiled and hugged her grandchildren. "The most important thing," she said, "is that you'll never have to go through the same hardships your mother and I did. But I hope you'll have the same determination to make a difference in the world." "We will," Hope promised. "That's what family does." "That's what our family does," Nathan corrected, and they all laughed. That evening, Emily sat on her favorite porch, gazing at the stars. It was the same porch where she had once made desperate plans 25 years earlier, but now she was looking out at a bright future full of possibilities. Olivia joined her, bringing 2 cups of tea. "What are you thinking about, Mum?" Olivia asked. "I'm thinking we've fulfilled our mission," Emily answered. "Not only did we survive, we thrived, and most importantly, we built something that will last long beyond us." Olivia nodded. "You gave me the greatest gift a mother can give her daughter," she said. "You taught me I can overcome anything, and you're passing that same gift on to Hope and Nathan," Emily observed. The two sat in comfortable silence, watching the gentle sway of the trees in the wind and listening to the nighttime sounds of the thriving estate they had built together. "Mom," said Olivia after a while, "thank you for never giving up." "Thank you for growing with me," replied Emily. "This journey was only possible because we did it together." It was a simple conversation, but it captured the essence of the extraordinary journey they had taken since that traumatic day when they were forced out of their home. 5 years later, Emily turned 65, surrounded by a large and thriving family. Hope had married and was expecting her first child. Nathan was about to graduate from university as a software engineer with a specialization in social technology. The institute led by Hope had become the country's premier training center for young leaders. The company, founded by Emily and Olivia, was a leader in its industry and employed over 1,000 people. Their foundation had helped nearly 3,000 women start their own businesses. More important than any numbers, Emily had built a legacy of values that would endure through generations. During Emily's birthday celebration, Hope made a special announcement. "I want to name the baby after Grandma," said Hope, a hand resting on her belly. "If it's a girl, she'll be named Emily. If it's a boy, he'll be named Jacob Richard, after the grandfather he never got to meet and the grandmother who taught me everything about strength." Emily was deeply moved by the tribute. "It's a great honor," she said, "but I hope she or he creates their own identity and follows their own dreams." "Oh, they will," Hope assured her, "but they'll always know where they come from and that they're part of a family that turns obstacles into opportunities." 3 months later, Hope gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Emily Hope. When Emily held her great-granddaughter for the first time, she felt an emotional connection that transcended generations. "Welcome to the family, little Emily," she whispered to the baby. "You'll grow up knowing you can be anything you want to be." Little Emily opened her eyes and seemed to look straight at her great-grandmother, as if understanding the significance of the moment. Olivia watched the scene with tears in her eyes. "4 generations of strong women," she murmured. "Dad would be so proud." Emily nodded, remembering the husband who had left too soon to witness the extraordinary journey that had unfolded since his passing. "He's watching," Emily said with conviction, "and he's proud of all of us." In the following months, Emily divided her time between caring for her great-granddaughter and writing her final memoirs. She wanted to ensure every detail of the family's journey was preserved for future generations. Nathan, now a graduate working as a social technology developer, created an interactive digital archive of the entire family history, including photos, documents, and videos tracing their evolution from the earliest days to the present. "Grandma, I made something special for you," Nathan said, showing her the digital archive. "It's our whole story, but told in a way future generations can easily access and understand." Emily was amazed by the sophistication of Nathan's work. He had transformed decades of history into an interactive experience, allowing users to explore different aspects of the family's journey. "Nathan, this is incredible," Emily said. "You've turned our story into something alive that can inspire people forever." "It's my contribution to the family legacy," Nathan replied modestly. Emily realized each family member had found their own unique way to contribute to their shared legacy. Olivia, through business leadership; Hope, through transformational education; Nathan, through technological innovation; and herself, through laying the foundation upon which they had all flourished. On her 70th birthday, Emily was surprised with a ceremony where she received the title of Honorary Citizen of the City. It was a recognition of the impact she and her family had on the local community. During the ceremony, the mayor read a proclamation summarizing Emily's contributions. Emily Cooper transformed personal adversity into collective prosperity, creating jobs, educating leaders, and inspiring generations of women to believe in their own potential. Emily was moved by the recognition, but what touched her most were the testimonials from ordinary people in the community who had been impacted by her work. A young businesswoman mentored by the foundation said, "Mrs. Emily taught me that my humble beginnings didn't determine my destiny. Today, I employ 15 people and support my family with dignity." A former student from the institute run by Hope declared, "The institute taught me that leadership is about serving others, not personal power. Today I run an NGO that helps at-risk children." A local farmer commented, "The technologies developed by Nathan revolutionized my production. They tripled my income and allowed me to use sustainable methods." Emily listened to each testimony with deep gratitude. It was concrete proof that the family's legacy had spread far beyond their own lives. After the ceremony, Emily walked once more to the memorial garden where it had all begun. She was accompanied by Olivia, Hope, Nathan, and little Emily, now 2 years old, exploring the gardens with childlike curiosity. "Little Emily," the great-grandmother said, kneeling beside the girl. "This is the place where our story started. One day you'll understand why it's so special." The child didn't understand the words, but smiled and hugged her great-grandmother with the natural affection of children. Emily looked around and saw not just the thriving property they had built, but also the future stretching through the generations to come. "Olivia," Emily said to her daughter, "do you remember the day we first left here?" "I remember it perfectly," Olivia replied. "I thought it was the end of the world." "It was the end of one world," Emily said, "but it was the beginning of a much better one." Hope joined the conversation. "Grandma, did you ever imagine it would come to all this when you were forced to leave here?" she asked. Emily considered the question honestly. "I never imagined the magnitude," she admitted, "but I always believed we could build something better if we worked hard enough." Nathan, who was documenting the moment with his camera, made a thoughtful observation. "I think the secret was that you never tried to build an empire. You tried to build a dignified life, and the empire came naturally." Emily smiled at her grandson's wisdom. "That's true," she agreed. "It was never about getting rich or famous. It was always about creating a life where we could be useful and happy. And it was about proving we were capable of so much more than that man thought," Olivia added. Emily nodded. "That too," she admitted. "But mostly, it was about not letting others' opinions of our worth determine our future." As the sun began to set, the family returned to the main house. It was much larger and more comfortable than the original, but Emily had made sure to preserve some elements of the old structure to maintain a connection to their roots. During dinner, Nathan asked a question that surprised everyone. "Grandma, do you have any regrets about anything you did during this whole journey?" Emily thought carefully before answering. "Regret is a strong word," she finally said. "But there are some things I'd do differently if I could." "Like what?" Hope asked, curious. "Maybe I should have been less hard on myself in the early years," said Emily. I thought I had to be perfect to deserve success. Now I know that making mistakes and learning from them is part of the process. Olivia nodded understandingly. You've always been very demanding of yourself, she observed, but I think that's what got us where we are today. Perhaps, Emily agreed, but it also created a lot of unnecessary stress. I hope you've all learned to be kind to yourselves while pursuing your goals. We have, Hope assured her. You taught us that sustainability applies to our emotional and physical energy too. Emily smiled, pleased to know the next generations had absorbed a more balanced version of the lessons on determination and hard work. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Emily sat in her office and opened a new notebook. She had decided to write a letter to little Emily, which her great-granddaughter could read when she grew up. Dear great-granddaughter Emily, she began, on the day you were born, I had already traveled an extraordinary journey of over 40 years since the hardest moment of my life. Now, as you sleep peacefully in the next room, I want to leave you some words to discover when you're ready. Emily wrote for hours, pouring onto the page all the wisdom she had gathered over decades of experience. These weren't just practical business or leadership tips, but reflections on how to build a meaningful life. The secret, she wrote, isn't to avoid the storms, but to learn to dance in the rain. Every challenge you face is an opportunity to discover strength you didn't know you had. When she finished the letter, Emily placed it in a sealed envelope with instructions to give it to little Emily on her 18th birthday. In the years that followed, Emily maintained a quiet but productive routine. She continued offering selective mentorship, occasionally wrote for professional magazines, and above all, enjoyed her role as the matriarch of a thriving, close-knit family. Little Emily grew into an intelligent and curious child, displaying traits that echoed every family member. She had Olivia's determination, Hope's social awareness, Nathan's technological creativity, and the early wisdom that characterized the women of the family. Great-grandma, why do you always smile when you look at that garden? Little Emily asked one day when she was 5. Because that garden reminds me that sometimes the best beginnings look like the worst endings, Emily replied. The girl considered the answer, with the seriousness typical of precocious children. You mean bad things can turn into good things? She asked. I mean we can turn bad things into good things when we choose not to give up, Emily clarified. And you never gave up? Little Emily pressed. I wanted to, many times, Emily admitted honestly. But I always remembered there were people counting on me. The girl nodded as if the answer made perfect sense to her. Will I have people counting on me too? She asked. You absolutely will, Emily assured her. And when that happens, you'll find you're stronger than you think. These conversations with her great-granddaughter became one of Emily's greatest joys. She saw in the girl the potential to carry on and expand the family legacy in ways that couldn't yet be fully imagined. At 75, Emily was experiencing a phase of life she had never thought possible when she was forced off the farm, decades before. She was financially independent, respected in her community, surrounded by a loving family, and aware that she had made a significant difference in the world. Most importantly, she had proven to herself that an ordinary person, facing extraordinarily difficult circumstances, could create extraordinary results through persistence, hard work, and strong principles. One day, while organizing some old documents, Emily found the cracked water bottle that Colonel Richard Thornton had tossed to her on the day of their eviction. She had kept the bottle as a memento, and now she held it in her hands, reflecting on the entire journey. Olivia walked into the office and saw her mother with the bottle. You still keep this? Olivia asked, recognizing the object. I do, Emily replied. It reminds me that small acts of humanity can make a big difference in the toughest moments. He wasn't being humane when he kicked us out, Olivia pointed out. No, Emily agreed, but even so he gave water to 2 people about to walk 15 kilometers under the sun. It was the bare minimum, but it was something. Olivia considered her mother's perspective. You managed to find gratitude even in the worst experiences, she said with admiration. Not gratitude for the bad experiences, Emily clarified, but gratitude for having survived them and learned from them. It was an important distinction, reflecting the wisdom Emily had developed over decades of reflecting on her journey. That year, Hope announced she was pregnant with her second child. Emily was moved by the prospect of having another great-grandchild. "This baby will grow up hearing stories about the great-grandmother who changed the world," Hope said, hugging Emily. "I didn't change the world," Emily corrected. "I changed our small part of it, and I hope the next generations keep changing theirs too." When the second great-grandchild was born, a boy named Jacob Nathan, Emily held the baby in her arms and felt the same transcendent emotion she had experienced with every birth in the family. "Welcome, Jacob Nathan," she whispered to the baby. "You'll grow up in a world where you'll know from the start that you can achieve anything." Watching Emily with her great-grandson, Olivia was overcome with emotion. "Mom, you've accomplished so much more than anyone could expect from one lifetime," Olivia said. "I've accomplished what needed to be done," Emily replied simply, "and I'm not finished yet." It was true. Even at 75, Emily was still planning projects and initiatives. She was working on a definitive memoir and planning to establish a permanent scholarship for young people from low-income families. "What else do you want to do?" Olivia asked, curious about her mother's plans. "I want to live long enough to see how our story continues through all of you," Emily answered, "and I want to keep being useful as long as I have the strength for it." Emily maintained excellent health for her age, the result of decades of physical work, healthy eating, and a clear sense of purpose. She walked the property daily, tended to a small personal garden, and kept her mind active with reading and writing. Her doctor often held her up as an example of healthy aging. "Mrs. Cooper has the energy of someone 20 years younger," he would say. "That's what happens when you live a life with purpose." Emily smiled at the remarks, but knew her vitality came mostly from the satisfaction of having built something lasting and meaningful. On Emily's 80th birthday, the family organized a celebration that brought together hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by her work. It was a party, but also a tangible demonstration of the legacy she had created. During the ceremony, a special video was shown featuring testimonials from people across the country who had been inspired by Emily's story. There were businesswomen who had started ventures after reading her books, young leaders trained at Hope's Institute, and countless families who had been helped by the foundation. "Mrs. Emily taught us that it doesn't matter where you come from, but where you're going," said one of the speakers in the video. "She proved that an ordinary person can create extraordinary results," said another. Emily watched the video with deep emotion. It was rewarding to see how her story had multiplied through the lives of so many others. At the end of the celebration, Emily gave a short speech that summed up her perspective on the entire journey. 50 years ago, I was kicked out of a small house on this property with no money or prospects. Today, I celebrate my 80th birthday surrounded by family, friends, and a community we built together." The audience listened in respectful silence. If our story proves anything, it's that no situation is so difficult it can't be turned into an opportunity by people willing to work hard and never give up. The applause was long and heartfelt. Among the guests, many wiped away tears of emotion. After the party, Emily retreated to her room and wrote in her journal, "Today I turned 80 and saw how the seed planted in a moment of extreme pain blossomed into a tree that offers shade to so many. I couldn't ask for more from life." In the following years, Emily continued to live with vitality and purpose. She watched little Emily grow into an exceptional child, saw Jacob develop his unique personality, and followed the ongoing successes of Olivia, Hope, and Nathan. The company continued to thrive under Olivia's leadership, as she implemented innovations that kept it at the forefront of its industry. Hope's Institute had become an international benchmark for youth leadership, education. Nathan had created several social technologies used by organizations across the country. "Each of you has surpassed my most optimistic expectations," Emily said during a family dinner when she was 83. "We just followed the example you set," Hope replied. "No," Emily corrected. "You took the example I gave and made it better. That's what every generation should do." It was a perceptive remark that reflected Emily's understanding of how true legacies work. They're not about repeating the past, but using it as a foundation to create even better futures. Little Emily, now 8 years old, had begun asking more sophisticated questions about the family's history. "Great-grandma, were you angry at the man who kicked you out?" she asked one day. "I was very angry for a long time," Emily admitted. "But I learned that holding on to anger is like carrying a heavy stone. It only hurts the person carrying it." "And did you forgive him?" the girl continued. Emily thought carefully about her answer. "I learned to understand that he was acting out of his own fears and limitations," she said. "I don't have to approve of what he did, but I also don't have to let it keep hurting me." Little Emily nodded as if the answer made sense to her. "And if someone is mean to me, should I forgive them too?" she asked. "You must protect yourself first," Emily replied. "But afterward, when you're safe, you can choose whether to hold on to the anger or let it go. Letting go doesn't mean what happened was right. It means you won't let it keep hurting you." It was a sophisticated lesson about forgiveness and self-care that little Emily absorbed, with the same seriousness she gave to all her great-grandmother's teachings. At 85, Emily decided it was time to complete her definitive memoirs. She had worked on the project for years and now wanted to ensure all the important lessons were recorded for future generations. The final book, titled 50 Years Later, Reflections on a Journey of Transformation, became her most profound and personal work. It wasn't just the story of events, but a careful analysis of the lessons learned and how they could be applied by others. "This book is my final gift to the world," Emily said during the launch. "Everything I've learned in 85 years of life is here." The book was met with critical acclaim and became a national bestseller. More importantly for Emily, it was adopted as a reference text in leadership and entrepreneurship courses at universities across the country. Seeing the book's impact, Olivia made a touching observation. "Mom, you've managed to turn your personal experience into universal wisdom. It's the most generous gift anyone could give." Emily smiled at her daughter's remark. "Experience only has value when it's shared," she replied. "Keeping wisdom to yourself is wasting it." It was a philosophy that had guided Emily throughout her adult life, the belief that knowledge and experience must be shared to benefit as many people as possible. In the winter of her 86th year, Emily began noticing the first signs that her energy was waning. It wasn't illness, just the natural weariness that comes with old age. She accepted this transition with the same serenity she had faced all of life's other challenges. "It's natural," she told Olivia when her daughter expressed concern. "I've lived a full life and have no complaints." Emily used this time to focus even more on family, especially her great-grandchildren. Little Emily, now 10 years old, had become her constant companion, asking insightful questions and absorbing every word of wisdom. "Great-grandma, are you afraid of getting old?" the girl asked one day. "I'm not afraid of getting old," Emily replied. "I'm grateful to have lived long enough to grow old. Many people don't get that chance. And will you be sad if you have to go?" Little Emily continued with the direct honesty of children. Emily considered the question seriously. "I'll be sad to leave all of you," she admitted. "But I'll also be at peace knowing I'm leaving behind a strong, united family that will keep doing good in the world." The girl moved closer and hugged her great-grandmother. "I'll always remember everything you taught me," she promised. "And you'll teach your own children one day," Emily said. "That's how good lessons live on forever." That year, Emily decided to organize a special legacy passing ceremony where she would formally transfer the symbolic leadership of the family to the next generations. "It's not that I'm stepping back," she explained to the gathered family. "It's that I'm officially recognizing you all as the leaders of this family and its mission." The ceremony was intimate, just for immediate family and a few close friends. Emily gave a moving speech about what it meant to carry the family legacy forward. "This legacy isn't a burden," she said. "It's an opportunity. The chance to keep proving that ordinary people can create extraordinary things when they work together with a shared purpose." Olivia, Hope, and Nathan formally accepted the responsibility of continuing and expanding the work Emily had started. It was a symbolic moment, but deeply meaningful for everyone present. After the ceremony, Emily felt a weight lift. A responsibility she had carried for decades was now shared. For the first time in her adult life, she could simply be the wise and beloved matriarch, without also needing to be the active leader of all the family's projects. In the following months, Emily enjoyed a phase of life that was entirely new to her. The phase of simply being a grandmother and great-grandmother, free from other pressures or responsibilities. She spent her days reading, taking short walks, chatting with her great-grandchildren, and observing the movement of life around her. "I never thought I'd enjoy having nothing specific to do so much," she remarked to Olivia. "You deserve the rest," Olivia replied. "You've worked hard your whole life." "It's not rest," Emily corrected. "It's contemplation. I'm watching how our work continues to grow without needing my direct involvement." It was a deep satisfaction to see that everything she had built continued to function and thrive even without her active leadership. It was the ultimate proof that she had created something truly sustainable. On a spring afternoon when Emily was 87, she sat in the memorial garden watching little Emily and Jacob play among the flowers. Little Emily was teaching her younger brother about different types of plants, repeating lessons she had learned from her great-grandmother. Olivia approached and sat beside her mother. "What are you thinking about?" Olivia asked. "I'm thinking how surprising life is," Emily replied. "When I was forced to leave this place 50 years ago, I never imagined I'd one day be sitting here, watching my great-grandchildren play in a garden I planted in memory of that difficult day." "You completely transformed the meaning of this place," Olivia observed. "Not just this place," Emily said. "I transformed the meaning of our entire story." What began as a tragedy became the first chapter of a story of triumph. It was a profound reflection on the power of perspective and perseverance in reshaping personal narratives. As summer approached, Emily felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. Every goal she had set for herself throughout, her life had not only been achieved but surpassed. She had created financial security for her family, built thriving businesses, trained capable leaders, positively impacted thousands of lives, and, most importantly, proven that an ordinary person could create an extraordinary legacy. One evening, as she gazed at the stars from the porch that had become her favorite place for reflection, Emily offered a silent prayer of gratitude for the entire journey she had traveled. "Thank you," she thought, "for every challenge that made me stronger, for every person who helped me along the way, and for every opportunity to make a difference in others' lives." It was a gratitude that encompassed not just the good moments, but also the difficult ones that had been essential in forging her strength and determination. That fall, Emily decided to write personal letters for each family member, letters to be delivered at specific moments in each person's future. For Olivia, she wrote a letter to be opened on the day she too became a great-grandmother. For Hope, a letter to be read when she turned 50. For Nathan, a letter to be opened on his wedding day. For little Emily, a letter to be read when she turned 18. For Jacob, a letter to be opened when he graduated from university. Each letter contained specific advice, shared memories, and expressions of love and pride. Emily wrote carefully, pouring all her wisdom and affection into every word. "Why are you writing so many letters?" little Emily asked, watching her great-grandmother work. "Because I want to make sure there will always be a part of me with you during the important moments of your lives," explained Emily. "But you'll always be with us," said the little girl with the confidence of children. "One way or another, I always will be," Emily assured her. "These letters are just to be certain." When Emily turned 88, she was experiencing what doctors called exemplary aging. Her mind remained clear and sharp, her mobility was good for her age, and her energy, though diminished, was still enough for all the activities she considered important. During the birthday celebration, surrounded by 4 generations of the family she had helped raise and expand, Emily shared a public reflection on her journey. 88 years ago, I was born into a simple family with no special prospects, she told the gathered guests. Today I celebrate surrounded by an extraordinary family and a community we built together. She paused, looking at each familiar face around her. If my life proves anything, it's that it doesn't matter how your story begins. What matters is how you choose to write it from where you are. It was her last public speech, and it perfectly summarized the philosophy that had guided her entire adult life. In the months that followed, Emily entered a final phase of contemplation and peace. She spent her days quietly, enjoying every moment with family and watching her legacy continue to grow. The company had expanded to operate in 3 countries. Hope's Institute had trained over 5,000 young leaders. The foundation had helped 10,000 women start their own businesses. Nathan's technologies were being used by organizations across the continent. More important than any numbers, Emily saw that the values she had instilled remained alive and active in every family member and every project they touched. On a quiet winter morning, Emily awoke with a deep sense of peace she had never experienced before. She spent the day normally, chatting with family, reading a little, and watching her great-grandchildren play. That evening, she retired to her room earlier than usual. Before bed, she wrote one final entry in her journal. "Today I feel my mission is complete. We built something beautiful and lasting from what once seemed a hopeless situation. The next generations are ready to take our story even further. I am at peace." Emily fell asleep peacefully that night and did not wake the next morning. She passed away surrounded by the love of her family and the satisfaction of a life lived with purpose and impact. Emily's funeral was a celebration of life attended by thousands. Business leaders, educators, community figures, and ordinary people whose lives had been touched by her work came to pay their respects. During the ceremony, Olivia read a passage from her mother's final book. "True success isn't measured by wealth accumulated or titles earned, but by the number of lives you positively touch and the legacy of values you leave for future generations." It was the perfect summary of how Emily had lived and what she had built. Hope spoke about how her grandmother had turned adversity into strength. "She taught us that we are not victims of circumstance, but architects of our own destiny." Every challenge was seen as an opportunity to grow stronger. Nathan highlighted Emily's forward-thinking vision. She always thought in terms of generations, not just years. Every decision she made considered the impact on the children of her great-grandchildren. Little Emily, now 12, read a poem she had written for her great-grandmother. "You taught us that dreams don't expire, that strength comes from hard work and perseverance, that true success is helping others grow, and that love is the foundation of every lasting achievement." After the funeral, the family gathered at the estate for a private moment of reflection. They walked to the memorial garden where it had all begun and where Emily had requested her ashes to be scattered. "She came full circle," Olivia observed, as they spread their mother's ashes in the garden. "From the place where she suffered her greatest humiliation to where she created her greatest triumph. And now this place will keep inspiring people forever," added Hope. In the days that followed, the family discovered Emily had left detailed instructions for the continuation of all her projects. She had carefully planned the transition to ensure nothing they had built would be lost. She had also left a surprise, a new foundation specifically dedicated to helping single mothers in vulnerable situations, with a special focus on those who had lost their homes. "So other women won't have to go through what Olivia and I endured," read the letter explaining the new initiative. It was Emily's final gift to the world, an organization committed to solving the very kind of problem she had faced decades earlier. A year after Emily's passing, the family held a special ceremony on the first anniversary of her death. They planted a special tree in the memorial garden and placed a bench with a plaque summarizing her legacy. Emily Cooper, 1936-2024. Turned adversity into opportunity, built bridges where others saw gaps, proved an ordinary person can create extraordinary results. During the ceremony, little Emily, now 13, made a public promise. "I vow to continue the story my great-grandmother started, but in my own way, with my own ideas." She taught us each generation must go further than the last. It was a promise that perfectly captured the spirit of Emily's legacy. Not about repeating the past, but using it as a foundation to create even better futures. 5 years after Emily's passing, Her story continued to inspire people across the country. Her books were widely read, her methodologies taught in universities, and her organizations thrived under her family's leadership. Little Emily, now an 18-year-old about to start college, finally opened the letter her great-grandmother had left for her to read on this day. The letter said, "My dearest great-granddaughter Emily, if you're reading this, it means you've turned 18 and are ready to begin your own adult journey. I want you to know you carry within you the strength of all the women who came before you. Don't feel obligated to follow exactly in our footsteps. Your mission is to carve your own path, using the foundation we built as a starting point for even greater heights. Always remember, you are not defined by where you were born or the circumstances you faced. You are defined by the choices you make and the determination with which you pursue your dreams. The world needs your voice, your ideas, and your energy. Don't be afraid to dream big and work hard to make those dreams real. You are loved, you are capable, and you will make a difference in the world. With all my love and pride, Great-Grandma Emily." Young Emily wept as she read the letter, feeling a deep connection to the great-grandmother who had passed. She carefully folded the letter and tucked it away in a special place, promising herself she would always carry it as a reminder of her roots and inspiration for her future. On that same day, young Emily announced to her family her decision about what to study in college. "I'm going to study international development and public policy," she said. "I want to work to eliminate poverty and create opportunities for vulnerable people, not just in the United States but all over the world." Olivia, Hope and Nathan smiled as they heard the announcement. It was clear that young Emily had inherited not only her great-grandmother's name, but also her broad vision and commitment to social justice. "Great-grandmother would be so proud," said Olivia, hugging her granddaughter. "She is proud," corrected young Emily, "and I'll live up to the name I carry." It was a promise that echoed through generations, each one committed to going further than the last, building upon the solid foundation Emily had created from what seemed like an end, but was truly just the beginning of an extraordinary story of transformation and triumph. The estate where it all began continued to thrive, now managed by the family's fourth generation. The memorial garden where Emily had scattered her ashes had become a pilgrimage site for people seeking inspiration to overcome their own hardships. And so the story that had begun with tears and despair continued to be written with joy and hope, proving that there are no true endings, only new beginnings built upon the strong foundations laid by those who came before and refused to give up. Young Emily walked through the memorial garden on a sunny afternoon, carrying her college books and dreaming of the changes she wanted to bring to the world. She stopped at the exact spot where her great-grandmother had been humiliated decades earlier and smiled, knowing that every step she took honored not only her own journey but the entire history of strength and determination that had made her existence possible. "Thank you, great-grandmother," she whispered to the wind, "for teaching me that anything is possible." And the wind seemed to whisper back, carrying the essence of all the strong women who had turned that place of pain into a sanctuary of hope and endless possibilities. The end of the story. Now tell us what you thought of Emily and Olivia's story. Where are you watching from? If you have something to share with us about overcoming hardships and new beginnings, leave us a heartfelt comment. Do you think Emily made the right choices in turning humiliation into motivation? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this three-generation journey. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories of transformation and hope.